Story 1. Overheard my stepmom and stepsister plotting to cut me out of my dad's inheritance. So I moved out and struggled alone for a year. Now my dad knows why and everything has changed. I'm 23M and I've been living with my dad, stepmom, and stepsister for the past 5 years. My mom passed away when I was 16 and my dad remarried about a year later. It was a quick marriage and before I knew it I had a new stepmom, Diane, and a stepsister, Megan, who's 2 years younger than me. At first things were okay, not great, but okay. Diane tried to play the role of doting mother, but it always felt forced. Megan was polite but distant. I chalked it up to the awkwardness of our new family dynamic and figured things would improve over time. My dad threw himself into his work after my mom died, and that didn't change after he remarried. He's a successful business owner, often away on trips or working late. This left me spending a lot of time with Diane and Megan, which was fine at first. We'd have family dinners when Dad was home and everything seemed normal on the surface. I went off to college but stayed local, coming home on weekends and breaks. After graduation I moved back in while looking for a job in my field. That's when things started to change. Diane became less welcoming, making comments about how I should be out on my own by now. Megan, who had just finished her own degree, moved back in too. Suddenly the house felt crowded, and there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite put my finger on. I've been job hunting for a few months now, sending out applications and going on interviews. It's been tough in this economy, but I'm trying. Dad's been supportive, telling me to take my time and find the right fit. Diane, on the other hand, has been increasingly vocal about me needing to move out. Last week, I overheard a conversation that turned my world upside down. I was in my room, door closed, when I heard Diane and Megan talking in the hallway. They must have thought I was out because they weren't making any effort to keep their voices down. Diane was saying something about how they needed to get rid of him before the will was finalized. Megan agreed, adding that they couldn't risk him getting an equal share. It didn't take a genius to figure out they were talking about me. I sat there frozen as they continued their conversation. They discussed various ways to convince my dad that I needed to move out. Diane suggested cutting off my access to the family car, making it harder for me to get to interviews. Megan proposed accidentally breaking my laptop so I couldn't apply for jobs online. The conversation went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes. They talked about how much money they could get if I wasn't in the picture, about trips they could take and things they could buy, all while plotting to sabotage my life. When they finally moved away from my door, I felt sick to my stomach. These were people I'd lived with for years, who I'd considered family, and here they were plotting against me like I was some kind of obstacle to be removed. The next few days were a blur. I tried to act normal, but it was hard. Every interaction with Diane and Megan felt tainted now. I caught them watching me sometimes with calculating looks in their eyes. It made my skin crawl. I thought about telling my dad, but I hesitated. He seemed happy with Diane, and I didn't want to be the one to shatter that illusion. Plus, I had no proof. It would be my word against theirs, and I wasn't sure whose side he'd take. So I decided to play it cool and start making plans. I reached out to some friends asking if anyone needed a roommate. I doubled down on my job search, applying to positions I'd previously thought were beneath me. Anything to get out of this house. A week after overhearing the conversation, I got my first break. A friend of a friend was looking for someone to sublet their apartment for 6 months while they studied abroad. The rent was steep, but it was doable if I dipped into my savings. I jumped at the chance. When I told my dad I was moving out, he seemed surprised but supportive. Diane and Megan, on the other hand, couldn't hide their glee. They made a show of helping me pack all while exchanging knowing looks when they thought I wasn't paying attention. The day I moved out, I overheard them again. This time they were discussing how to ensure Dad didn't change the will now that I was gone. It made me realize that this wasn't just about getting me out of the house. They wanted to cut me out entirely. I've been in my new place for a month now. It's small and not in the best area, but it's mine. I'm still job hunting, picking up gig work where I can to make ends meet. It's not ideal, but it's better than living in that house with people who see me as nothing more than an obstacle to their inheritance. Dad calls every few days to check in. He's noticed that I don't come around much anymore, and I can tell he's worried. I make excuses about being busy with job hunting and settling into my new place. I can't bring myself to tell him the truth. Not yet anyway. I've thought about hiring a lawyer, maybe trying to protect my inheritance, but the truth is I don't care about the money. What hurts is knowing that the people I thought were my family see me as nothing more than a roadblock to their financial gain. Sometimes late at night I wonder if my mom would be disappointed in me for not fighting harder. But then I remember how she always taught me that family was about love, not blood or legal documents. By that definition, Diane and Megan were never really my family at all. I'm not sure what the future holds. Part of me wants to confront them, to call them out on their scheming. Another part just wants to walk away and never look back. For now, I'm focused on building my own life, one that doesn't depend on anyone else's goodwill or inheritance. Last week, I finally landed a job. It's entry level and the pay isn't great, but it's a start. I haven't told Dad yet. I'm not sure I want Diane and Megan to know anything about my life anymore. The less they know, the less they can try to sabotage. I've started therapy, the cheapest I could find, trying to work through the anger and betrayal I feel. It's helping slowly. My therapist suggested writing letters to Diane and Megan, not to send, but to get my feelings out. I've filled notebooks with all the things I wish I could say to them. Sometimes I dream about my mom. In these dreams, she's always smiling, telling me she's proud of me. I wake up feeling a mix of comfort and loss. I miss her more than ever now, wishing I had her guidance to navigate this mess. I've thought about reaching out to my mom's side of the family. We lost touch after she died, mostly because it was too painful for all of us. But now I find myself craving that connection. Maybe it's time to rebuild those bridges. As the months have passed, I've settled into a routine. Work, home, repeat. It's not exciting, but it's stable. I'm slowly building a life for myself, one that has nothing to do with Diane, Megan, or any inheritance. Dad's birthday is coming up next month. I'm debating whether or not to go to the family dinner. Part of me wants to see him, to celebrate with him, but the thought of sitting across the table from Diane and Megan pretending everything is fine makes me feel ill. I've started volunteering at a local youth center on weekends. Many of the kids there come from broken homes or have lost parents. I can relate to them in a way I never could have before all this happened. It's been healing in its own way to help these kids navigate their grief and anger. Sometimes I wonder what Diane and Megan tell people about why I moved out so suddenly. Do they paint me as the ungrateful stepson/stepbrother who abandoned the family? Or do they simply pretend I never existed? I try not to dwell on it, but the thoughts creep in sometimes. I've made some new friends at work and through my volunteering. It's nice to have people in my life who know me for who I am, not for my potential inheritance or family connections. These relationships feel more genuine than anything I had with Diane or Megan. The other day, I ran into Megan at the grocery store. It was awkward to say the least. She acted overly friendly, asking about my job and my new place. I kept my answers vague and got out of there as quickly as I could. The encounter left me shaken for days. I started thinking about my long-term future. Do I want to stay in this city where I might run into Diane or Megan at any time? Or do I want to make a clean break? Move somewhere new where no one knows my history? The idea is tempting, but I'm not sure I'm ready to leave my dad behind just yet. As my lease nears its end, I'm faced with decisions. Do I renew? Look for a better place? The idea of moving again is exhausting, but so is the thought of staying in this tiny apartment indefinitely. It's just another reminder of how much my life has changed in such a short time. I've started dating recently, nothing serious, just a few casual dates here and there. It's been nice, but also challenging. I find myself hesitant to open up, worried about being hurt or betrayed again. My therapist says this is normal, that it will take time to rebuild my trust. Work has been going well. I recently got a small promotion which has helped ease my financial stress a bit. I'm no longer dipping into my savings every month just to make rent. It's a small victory, but it feels significant. I still haven't told Dad about overhearing Diane and Megan's conversation. Every time I think about bringing it up, I talk myself out of it. What if he doesn't believe me? What if it causes a rift between us? The thought of losing him too is more than I can bear. Sometimes I find myself angry at my mom for dying, for leaving me in this situation. It's irrational, I know, but the feeling persists. If she were here, none of this would be happening. I'd still have a home, a family, a sense of belonging. I try to push these thoughts away, but they linger. I've started learning to cook. It's something I never had to do when living at home, but now it's a necessity. I'm not great at it yet, but I'm improving. There's something satisfying about creating a meal from scratch, about nourishing myself in this tangible way. The holidays are approaching, and with them comes a whole new set of challenges. Do I go home for Christmas? Do I make excuses to stay away? The thought of fake smiles and forced cheer around the dinner table makes my stomach churn. But the idea of spending the holidays alone isn't much better. I've been having trouble sleeping lately. I lie awake at night replaying that overheard conversation in my head. I analyze every interaction I've had with Diane and Megan since they entered my life, wondering if there were signs I missed. It's exhausting, but I can't seem to shut my brain off. I've thought about confronting Diane and Megan directly, letting them know that I heard everything, that I know what they're trying to do. But what would that accomplish? They'd probably just deny it or twist it somehow, and it might get back to Dad causing more problems than it solves. Some days I'm okay. I go to work, I come home, I live my life. Other days, the weight of everything that's happened crushes me. On those days, it's hard to get out of bed, hard to face a world where the people who were supposed to be my family saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. I've started keeping a journal, writing down my thoughts and feelings each day. It helps somewhat to get it all out on paper. Maybe someday I'll look back on these entries and see how far I've come. For now, they serve as a record of this tumultuous time in my life. As I approach the 6-month mark of living on my own, I find myself reflecting on everything that's happened. I'm not the same person I was when I overheard the conversation. I'm stronger in some ways, more fragile in others. I'm learning to stand on my own 2 feet, to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's goodwill or inheritance. I don't know what the future holds. Will I ever confront Diane and Megan? Will I tell Dad the truth? Will I be able to move past this betrayal and build trusting relationships again? These questions remain unanswered. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time, focusing on building a life that's entirely my own. It's not easy, and it's not the life I thought I'd have, but it's mine, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Update 1. It's been a year since I moved out of my dad's house after overhearing my stepmom and stepsister plotting to get rid of me. A lot has changed in that time, and not all of it for the better. I apologize for the delay in updating this post. Life has been incredibly hectic, and I've been struggling to find the time and emotional energy to sit down and write everything out. Between work, therapy, and just trying to keep my head above water, updating Reddit wasn't exactly a priority. But I know many of you have been wondering what happened, so I'm finally forcing myself to share this update. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post with advice, support, and kind words. Your messages meant more to me than you could know, especially during those first few difficult months on my own. I tried to read every comment, even if I didn't have the capacity to respond to them all. Your support has been a bright spot in an otherwise dark time, and I'm grateful for this community. So now on to the update. I'm still at the same job I landed shortly after moving out. The work is okay, but the pay is barely enough to cover my expenses. I've been looking for something better, but the job market is tough. Every rejection email feels like a personal failure, a reminder that I'm still struggling to get my life on track. My relationship with my dad has become strained. I've been avoiding family gatherings and making excuses not to visit. He's noticed, of course. He calls more frequently now, asking if everything's okay. I hate lying to him, but I can't bring myself to tell him the truth about why I left. The few times I've seen him, he's looked worried and tired. I wonder if Diane and Megan are causing him stress, or if it's just concern for me. I did end up going to his birthday dinner a few months back. It was as uncomfortable as I'd feared. Diane and Megan were all smiles and false cheer, asking about my job and my apartment with saccharine concern. I could see the calculation behind their eyes, probably wondering if I was struggling enough to give up any claim to an inheritance. I left as soon as I could, making an excuse about an early meeting the next day. The holidays were rough. I told Dad I couldn't make it home for Christmas, claiming I had to work. In reality, I spent the day alone in my apartment, eating microwave turkey dinner and watching old movies. It was depressing, but still better than pretending to be a happy family with Diane and Megan. I've been thinking more and more about telling Dad the truth, but every time I consider it, I talk myself out of it. What if he doesn't believe me? What if it causes a rift between us? Or worse, what if he does believe me but chooses to stay with Diane anyway? I'm not sure I could handle that kind of rejection. My therapy sessions have been helpful, but progress is slow. I'm still working through the anger and betrayal I feel. My therapist says it's normal, that healing takes time, but some days it feels like I'll never get past this. I've had a few more run-ins with Megan around town. Each time she acts like everything's normal, like we're still one big happy family. It makes my skin crawl. I've taken to avoiding certain stores and restaurants just to minimize the chance of seeing her or Diane. The volunteer work at the youth center has been a bright spot. I've connected with some of the kids there, particularly a teenager named Alex who lost his mom last year. Helping him navigate his grief has been healing for me too, in a way. It's a reminder that there's still good in the world, still connections to be made. I've tried dating a few times over the past year, but it hasn't gone well. I find myself struggling to open up, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. My last date ended with a girl telling me I had too much baggage. She's probably right. My lease is up next month and I'm not sure what to do. The idea of moving is exhausting, but I'm also tired of this tiny apartment with its noisy neighbors and temperamental heating. I've been looking at places in other parts of town, maybe even in the next city over. A fresh start is tempting. I did end up reaching out to my mom's sister, my Aunt Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years, not since Mom's funeral. It was awkward at first, but as we talked it felt like reconnecting with a part of myself I'd lost. She invited me to visit her family for a weekend. I'm considering it, though the idea of explaining everything that's happened is daunting. Work has been more stressful lately. There have been rumors of layoffs, and as one of the newer employees, I'm worried I'll be on the chopping block. The thought of losing my job terrifies me. I don't have much savings left, and I'm not sure how long I could stay afloat without an income. I've started having nightmares about being homeless, about having to go back to Dad's house and face Diane and Megan. I wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing. It takes hours to calm down enough to sleep again. My birthday came and went without much fanfare. Dad called, of course, and a few friends took me out for drinks, but it was hard not to compare it to birthdays past, when Mom was alive and we had big family celebrations. The contrast was stark and depressing. I've been thinking about my mom a lot lately. I wonder what she'd think of all this, how she'd advise me to handle it. Sometimes I talk to her photo, telling her everything that's happened. It's childish maybe, but it helps. The anger I feel towards Diane and Megan hasn't lessened much over the past year. If anything, it's intensified. I find myself imagining confronting them, telling them I know everything. In my daydreams they break down and confess, and Dad kicks them out, but I know that's just fantasy. I've started looking into legal options, just in case. I met with a lawyer who specializes in estate law. He said that without proof there's not much I can do to protect any potential inheritance. He suggested talking to my dad about setting up a trust, but that would mean telling him everything. I'm not ready for that yet. My health has started to suffer from all the stress. I've lost weight and I'm constantly tired. My doctor says my blood pressure is elevated and I need to find ways to relax. Easier said than done. I've thought about moving away completely, starting fresh in a new city where there's no chance of running into Diane or Megan, but the thought of leaving Dad behind, of potentially never seeing him again, is too painful to consider seriously. There have been moments of light in all this darkness. I've made a few good friends at work and through my volunteering. They don't know the full story, but they've been supportive in their own ways. It's nice to have people in my life who like me for who I am, not for any potential inheritance. I've picked up some new hobbies to fill my time and take my mind off things. I've been learning to play guitar, something I always wanted to do but never had the time for before. I'm not very good yet, but the process of learning is satisfying. I've also started running. At first it was just a way to get out of my apartment and clear my head, but I found that I enjoy it. There's something freeing about pushing my body to its limits, leaving all my worries behind for a little while. As the 1-year mark of my move-out approached, I found myself growing increasingly anxious. It felt like I should have made more progress, should be in a better place by now. My therapist says I'm being too hard on myself, that healing isn't linear. I'm trying to believe her. I did end up visiting Aunt Sarah and her family. It was nice to be around people who knew my mom, who could share stories about her that I'd never heard. For a weekend, I felt like I belonged somewhere again, but coming back to my empty apartment afterward was harder than I expected. The visit also stirred up some complicated feelings. Aunt Sarah asked about Dad, about how he was doing with his new wife. I found myself unable to answer, choking on the words. She noticed, of course, and gently probed for more information. I ended up telling her everything. Aunt Sarah was furious on my behalf. She wanted to call Dad immediately to confront Diane and Megan herself. I had to talk her down, explain why I hadn't told him yet. She didn't agree with my decision, but she respected it. Before I left, she made me promise to keep in touch, to let her know if I needed anything. Knowing that someone from my mom's side of the family is in my corner has been comforting, and Sarah calls regularly now, checking in on me. She's even offered to let me stay with her family if things get too tough financially. I'm not ready to take her up on that yet, but it's nice to know the option is there. As for Dad, things came to a head last week. He showed up at my apartment unannounced, worry etched on his face. He said he couldn't stand the distance between us anymore, that he needed to know what was going on. I tried to deflect, to make excuses, but he wasn't having it. We ended up talking for hours. I told him everything. Overhearing Diane and Megan's conversation, my fears about the inheritance, why I had been avoiding family gatherings. It all came pouring out in a rush of emotion I couldn't control. Dad listened silently, his face growing more grave with each word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he apologized. He said he had no idea any of this was happening, that he'd been blind to what was going on in his own home. He didn't outright say he believed me, but he didn't dismiss my concerns either. He promised to look into things, to pay closer attention to Diane and Megan's behavior. He also said he'd talk to his lawyer about protecting my inheritance, regardless of what happened with his marriage. I felt relieved after our talk, like a weight had been lifted, but I also felt guilty for potentially disrupting his life, his marriage. Dad assured me that I'd done the right thing by telling him, that he needed to know, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. It's been a week since the conversation and I haven't heard much from Dad. He texted to say he was looking into things and would be in touch soon. I'm trying not to read too much into the silence, but it's hard not to worry. Diane called me yesterday, her voice syrupy sweet as she invited me to Sunday dinner. I declined, making an excuse about work. I wonder if she knows that Dad and I talked, if she's trying to do damage control. The thought makes me feel slightly nauseous. As I approach the start of my second year on my own, I find myself at a crossroads. Do I stay here, close to Dad, but also to Diane and Megan? Do I take Aunt Sarah up on her offer and move closer to my mom's family? Do I strike out on my own completely, move to a new city and start fresh? I don't have answers yet, but for the first time in a long time I feel like I have options. The future is uncertain, but it doesn't feel as bleak as it did a year ago. I'm not okay, not really, but I think I might be getting there. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm focusing on my job, my volunteering, my new hobbies. I'm working on building a life that's entirely my own, one that doesn't depend on anyone else's goodwill or inheritance. It's not easy and it's not the life I thought I'd have, but it's mine and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The conversation with Dad has stirred up a lot of old feelings. I find myself thinking about Mom more than ever, wondering what she would make of all this. Would she be proud of me for standing on my own? Disappointed that I didn't fight harder? I'll never know, and that uncertainty gnaws at me. I've been having trouble sleeping again. Every time my phone rings I jump, wondering if it's Dad with news. The waiting is excruciating. I've thrown myself into work and my hobbies, anything to keep my mind occupied, but in the quiet moments the worry creeps back in. Update 2. Megan tried to friend me on social media last week. I ignored the request, but it left me feeling unsettled. Is she trying to keep tabs on me? Or is it just another attempt to maintain the facade of a happy family? Either way, I want no part of it. I've been thinking about the future a lot lately. Before all this happened, I had vague plans of maybe going to grad school someday, of advancing in a career. Now I feel stuck in survival mode, just trying to keep my head above water. I wonder if I'll ever be able to think about the future with hope again instead of anxiety. The lease on my apartment is up next week. After much thinking, I've decided to move not far, just to a slightly better apartment in a different part of town. It's a small step, but it feels significant, like I'm choosing to move forward instead of staying stuck in place. I had dinner with Alex from the youth center last night. He's heading off to college soon, and he wanted to thank me for all the support I've given him over the past year. Seeing how far he's come, how he's working through his grief and moving forward with his life, gave me a glimmer of hope. Maybe I can do the same. As I pack up my apartment, I find myself taking stock of my life. A year ago, I left my family home with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. Now I have a job, an apartment, friends. It's not much, but it's something I've built for myself. There's a certain pride in that, mixed with the lingering pain and uncertainty. I'm still waiting to hear from Dad about what he's found out. The silence is deafening, but I'm trying to be patient. Whatever happens, I know I'll face it. I'm stronger now than I was a year ago. I've survived betrayal, loneliness, and uncertainty. I can survive whatever comes next. For now, I'm focusing on my move, on setting up my new apartment, on making it feel like home, on continuing to build a life that's mine regardless of what happens with Dad, Diane, and Megan. It's not the life I thought I'd have, but it's the one I'm living, and for today that has to be enough. Update 3. It's been about 3 months since my last update and a lot has happened. I'm not sure where to begin, but I guess I'll start with the biggest news. Dad finally made his decision. After our talk where I told him everything about overhearing Diane and Megan's plans, Dad spent weeks investigating. He hired a private investigator, went through financial records, and even set up some kind of sting operation that he won't give me the details of. But in the end, he uncovered enough evidence to confirm everything I told him, and then some. It turns out Diane and Megan had been siphoning money from Dad's accounts for years. They'd been making small withdrawals, nothing big enough to raise suspicion, but it added up to a significant amount over time. They'd also been pressuring Dad to change his will, using emotional manipulation tactics that the PI documented. When Dad confronted them with the evidence, all hell broke loose. Diane tried to deny everything at first, then tried to blame it all on Megan. Megan broke down and confessed to everything, throwing Diane under the bus in the process. It was a mess. Long story short, Dad filed for divorce. He's also pressing charges for the financial fraud. Diane and Megan have moved out, and last I heard they were staying with Diane's sister in another state. I have mixed feelings about all of this. On one hand, I feel vindicated. Everything I feared, everything I overheard, it was all true. On the other hand, I hate seeing Dad go through this pain. He loved Diane, or at least he thought he did. Finding out it was all a lie has been devastating for him. Dad and I have been talking more now. He's apologized countless times for not seeing what was happening, for not believing me sooner. I've forgiven him, but our relationship is still strained. We're working on it, though. We've started having weekly dinners together, just the two of us. It's awkward sometimes, but it's a start. As for me, I'm still in my new apartment. The move was good for me, I think. It feels like a fresh start, a place that's truly mine without any connections to Diane or Megan. I've been slowly furnishing it, making it feel like home. It's not much, but it's mine, and that means something. Work has been going better. The layoffs I was worried about didn't end up happening, and I even got a small raise. It's not much, but it's enough that I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. I've started putting a little bit away in savings each month. It's not much, but it's a start. Therapy is ongoing. My therapist says I'm making progress, even if it doesn't always feel like it. The anger and betrayal are still there, but they're not as all-consuming as they once were. I'm learning to live with what happened, to not let it define me. I've been spending more time with my mom's side of the family. Aunt Sarah has been a godsend through all of this. She's become a sort of surrogate mother figure, always there with advice or just a listening ear when I need it. I've been visiting her family more often, getting to know my cousins again. It's nice to feel like I have a family again, even if it's not the one I grew up with. Dating is still complicated. I've been on a few dates, but nothing serious. I'm still working on trusting people, on opening up. My therapist says this is normal, that it will take time. I'm trying to be patient with myself. One unexpected development is that I've started writing. Nothing fancy, just journaling at first, but lately I've been thinking about turning my experiences into a book, maybe a memoir or maybe fictionalized. I'm not sure yet, but writing has been cathartic, a way to process everything that's happened. Dad and I had a long talk last week about the inheritance issue. He set up a trust for me, separate from his personal assets. He says he wants to make sure I'm taken care of no matter what happens. I tried to tell him it wasn't necessary, that I don't care about the money, but he insisted. I think it's his way of trying to make amends. Dad's been talking about selling the house too. Too many bad memories, he says. Part of me is sad about it. It was my childhood home after all, but I understand his need for a fresh start. We've been looking at smaller places together. He jokes about becoming roommates, but I think we both know we need our own spaces. I ran into one of Megan's friends at the grocery store last week. She glared at me, muttered something about me ruining Megan's life. I wanted to yell, to defend myself. Instead, I just walked away. Their opinions don't matter anymore. I know the truth, and that's enough. Work has been a good distraction through all of this. I've thrown myself into my job, taking on extra projects whenever I can. My boss has noticed. She's hinted at a possible promotion in the near future. It's nice to feel valued, to know that my hard work is paying off. Dad and I are planning a trip together. Nothing fancy, just a weekend at a nearby lake. We used to go camping there when I was a kid, before Mom got sick. It feels like a step towards rebuilding our relationship, towards creating new memories to replace the painful ones. I've been thinking about Mom a lot lately, wondering what she would think of everything that's happened. I miss her more than ever. Aunt Sarah gave me a box of Mom's old things last time I visited. Photos, letters, even some of her jewelry. Going through it was emotional, but healing too. It's nice to have these tangible connections to her. I've started reaching out to old friends, people I lost touch with when everything went down with Diane and Megan. Some have been receptive, others not so much, but it feels good to be rebuilding my support network, to have people in my life who knew me before all this happened. The legal proceedings against Diane and Megan are ongoing. Dad's lawyer keeps us updated, but I try not to focus on it too much. They'll face consequences for their actions, but I don't want their fate to control my life anymore. I've been thinking about the future more lately, not just surviving day to day, but actually planning ahead. I'm considering going back to school, maybe for a master's degree. It's a big step, but for the first time in a long time I feel capable of taking it. There are still bad days, but the good days are starting to outnumber the bad ones. I'm not okay, not yet, but I'm getting there. I'm building a life for myself, one that's not defined by what Diane and Megan tried to do to me. It's not the life I thought I'd have, but it's mine, and for the first time in a long time I'm excited to see what the future holds. To everyone who's followed my story, who's offered support and advice along the way, thank you. Your kindness has meant more than you know. This will be my final update. It's time for me to close this chapter of my life and focus on writing the next one. Wish me luck. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Toxic Sil stalked me and falsely accused me of cheating, nearly ruining my new marriage. Now she's shocked that we're cutting her out of the will while she plays the victim. I, 29F, recently got married to Finn, 30M, in a grand marriage. It's been 1 month into our marriage, and our life had been going great until Crazy Sil decided to interfere in our lives and ruin everything. For context, Finn has a younger sister named Deborah, 28F, who is a divorcee. I get along really well with his parents, but have always had a rocky relationship with his sister. She is incredibly negative, manipulative, and toxic. I have worked hard for years, partner and I have been together for 8.5 years, to avoid getting on her bad side. She is constantly talking bad about other people, complaining about my in-laws nonstop. They're not perfect, but they're not evil or abusive. She spends all her time talking about how crappy her life is, how this or that isn't going to work out, how some boss or ex-friend really screwed her over, and now she doesn't talk to them anymore, or that's why she had to quit her job. Over the years, I have recognized the patterns that scream she rarely accepts any responsibility for conflict, and she is constantly trying to recruit people to her side to see her as a victim. 6 months ago, we found out that Deborah's marriage was falling apart because of her gambling problem. This was a shocker because no one had any idea that she was into gambling. Apparently, she had cleverly hidden it from everyone and used it to secretly pay off what she owed using her ex-husband's money. However, he eventually found out as thousands of dollars kept going missing and confronted her about it. When the secret came out, he tried to get her to stop, but she wouldn't listen. Eventually, he had no choice but to divorce her. Since then, things only got worse. She became unbearable to be around, her addiction taking a toll on her personality. The divorce didn't just make her change. If anything, it made her even more difficult, casting a dark cloud over any chance of her getting better. I have always done my best to just be neutral and supportive whenever I am around her, as I don't want her to find a reason to get pissed at me. She lives across the country from us, so we usually only saw her once or twice a year anyway. Unfortunately, as soon as me and Finn got engaged, Deborah flipped a switch with me. It started with her storming off when we announced our engagement during Christmas time last year. Later she apologized and told us that our engagement announcement had made her feel bad about her past failed relationships. Despite her initial reluctance, she accepted my invitation to be a bridesmaid at our wedding, giving the impression that she was supportive, despite the underlying tensions. Despite this, she went from being friendly to gradually ignoring me anytime she saw me. For some reason, she remained involved with all the wedding activities, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. She criticized everything about the wedding every step of the way out loud. My future MIL and fiancé both called her out on her behavior, but it didn't help. I confronted her about this gently. I don't do well with conflict and asked if I did anything wrong. She denied anything was wrong and brushed me off. Just before our wedding, my in-laws decided to take us all out on a family vacation. I was a bit nervous about spending multiple vacation days around my Sil, as she had started to become a headache for me. As expected, during the vacation, she was in an especially bad mood. She was lashing out at everyone, weirdly demanding that we rearrange the furniture in the Airbnb that we were all staying in because she didn't like the way they were there. Her parents and my partner sometimes enabled this kind of irrational behavior as they were afraid of her anger issues, and they basically all did whatever she asked for in the hope that she would shut up. I was starting to get a little tired of her behavior after a few days and was trying to just keep to myself out of her warpath. Unfortunately, she seemed to notice this when I tried to politely decline some unsolicited advice she was offering me related to my work that I had not asked for. She then started to accuse me of snapping at her, which my lord would have felt so good to actually do after all these years, and then tried to call me out in front of her whole family. I firmly informed her that I am an expert in my field, which is why I have a high-paying job, and thus I was never seeking her advice. Her audacity surprised me, especially considering she had no idea about my line of work yet decided to meddle in my business. She basically spent the entire rest of the trip trying to get me to talk to her about how I had snapped at her. My partner told me whenever I would go to bed she would sit with my MIL and him and talk about how she doesn't know what's wrong with me. She would force them to listen and tell them that I was always condescending to her, treated her like she was stupid. My partner tried to explain to her my point of view, but she instantly dismissed it and accused him that he had changed after getting engaged to me. When our vacation ended, I was glad that I wouldn't have to see her around. I decided to not think much about the incident and got busy with my upcoming wedding preparations, but unfortunately Deborah had decided to extend her stay. She spent her time making up stories and spreading false rumors about me to my fiancé's relatives. I wouldn't have minded as much until one of his cousins called to confirm a crazy rumor she had spread about me, saying that I was not taking care of my fiancé and he was very unhappy with me. My fiancé assured his cousin that this was completely false and he was quite happy in our relationship. It was clear that Deborah was trying to manipulate people into thinking that I was a bad person. F and I talked about this, He expressed his frustration with Deborah's manipulative actions and acknowledged that her behavior had crossed a line and was tarnishing our relationship in the eyes of his family. I decided that I didn't want this kind of negativity around me, especially on the day of our marriage. I invited my in-laws and Sil out for lunch so we could have an open discussion regarding this. My fiancé couldn't be with me during this discussion as he had an important work trip. During our lunch, I laid my opinion out on the table and firmly told Sil that if she continued to say bad things about me, she would not be invited to my wedding. Hearing this, Deborah started yelling at me that I had no right to talk to her this way. My mother-in-law asked her to quiet down, but Deborah continued to yell that I was just a poor girl who had got the chance to marry her rich brother, so I should talk to her with more respect. I looked at her blankly as she accused me of trying to steal her brother for his money and that I was nothing more than a gold digger. My mother-in-law stepped in at this point, loudly telling Deborah to shut up and reprimanding her for speaking to me that way. My father-in-law also looked pissed and started to apologize to me for her behavior. Deborah tried to argue, claiming that I was attempting to steal from their family inheritance. I interjected to remind Deborah that I was quite financially independent and hailed from an affluent family myself. While we might not be as wealthy as my fiancé's family, it didn't mean we didn't lead a comfortable life ourselves. I pointed out to her that her condescension stemmed mostly from the fact that we were immigrants, which in her eyes somehow implied we were less well off than them. Deborah's eyes widened, and she started to stutter, not knowing what to say. I firmly reminded her that this was her last chance to change, and if she continued down this path, both me and my fiancé would uninvite her from the wedding. She looked pissed, but there was nothing more that she could say. After our conversation that day, I returned home still feeling distraught. My fiancé, when he came back home after his work trip, sensed something was wrong and asked me about it. I shared the details of my conversation with Deborah, and he was shocked to say the least. When I revealed to him the nature of her accusations, his eyes turned into anger. He told me that Deborah had no right to talk to me this way. He immediately called his parents and had a long conversation with them, and they all agreed that Deborah was getting out of control at this point. They decided to investigate further to figure out what was up with her. They quietly reached out to some of her buddies to get the lowdown. Turns out she was still neck-deep in gambling, feeding that addiction of hers. This news freaked us all out, especially her parents, who had given access to their bank account. They were scared she would drain all of their money with her gambling habit. Finn decided to have a real talk with her. It was tough, but he wanted her to get help for her gambling problem. However, Deborah, being stubborn as ever, wouldn't admit she had a serious issue. The whole situation was starting to get messy when his parents removed her access from their bank account. Deborah stormed into their place yelling at them angrily. She accused them of betraying her. She then went on about how they didn't understand her, that her gambling was none of their business. Deborah was furious that they had taken away her access to their bank account, claiming it was her money too. She even went on making wild claims that they were all trying to control her life. It was a chaotic scene, emotions flying all over the place, and there was no calming her down. Finn told me about what Deborah had done, and he seemed really worried about her. He and his folks were stuck wondering if anything they tried would actually help Deborah. They thought about interventions, counseling, and even support groups, but they knew Deborah would never agree to any of these options. A few weeks after that incident, Finn's parents invited both of us for dinner, and we knew it was a serious talk. As we gathered around the table, they looked more serious than ever. His parents opened up about their increasing concerns regarding Deborah. They were worried that her gambling addiction would lead her to drain the family wealth, and they didn't want to fuel her destructive habits by leaving her any part of their inheritance. Finn tried to protest that this might not be unfair because despite her antics, he loved her. I agreed with Finn as well because regardless of what I felt for Deborah, I thought she deserved to have an equal inheritance as Finn from their parents, but Finn's mother stopped us mid-track and nervously shared that she had recently discovered some of her cherished jewelry from her grandmother was missing. They got quite concerned as the jewelry was worth thousands of dollars and decided to review the CCTV footage where they saw Deborah walking into their bedroom and stealing this jewelry from the locker. The room fell into a stunned silence as we tried to process the weight of this betrayal. My in-laws then shared that they had tried to confront Deborah regarding this incident, but she had refused to accept her fault despite evidence. This is why they had begrudgingly decided not to leave her anything from their inheritance anymore. Finn was taken aback, but he understood the gravity of the situation. It was clear that Deborah's actions had not only strained our family relationship but were now putting a financial burden on his family. We understood now why his parents were contemplating making changes in their will to ensure that Deborah wouldn't have access to their assets. It was a tough decision for them, but they felt it was necessary to protect their financial well-being and the future of the family. Finn and I supported them, knowing that it was a difficult but essential step to safeguard everyone's interests. In the following days, Finn and his parents initiated conversations with legal professionals to navigate the complexities of adjusting their will. They were determined to find a solution that would protect their assets with an ironclad while so Deborah would not be able to contest it. Our wedding was fast approaching, so despite the ongoing family drama, I threw myself into the whirlwind of wedding preparations. My days became a flurry of fittings, decorations, and last-minute details. Out of nowhere, Deborah started getting involved in wedding activities like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. She criticized everything about the wedding planning every step of the way out loud again. I had to confront her about this gently. I don't do well with conflict and asked if I did anything wrong. As the wedding day approached, despite Deborah's negativity, our ceremony turned out to be a beautiful celeb of love. The venue was adorned with flowers and delicate decorations, creating an enchanting atmosphere. Surrounded by friends and family, F and I exchanged heartfelt vows, sealing our commitment to each other. The joyous moments, however, were tinged with a sense of unease, as I couldn't help but notice Deborah's distant and displeased demeanor during the festivities. She sat in a corner wearing a scowl that betrayed her true feelings. Despite my attempts to focus on the joyous occasion, I couldn't ignore the dark cloud cast by Deborah's resentment. Nonetheless, the love and support from others eclipsed her negativity, making our wedding a cherished memory despite the challenges. After a wonderful honeymoon, we returned home and got back into the swing of our daily lives. Work and routine took over, and things seemed to settle down. However, out of the blue yesterday, my crazy Sil did something to set our marriage ablaze. She invited herself to have dinner with us, telling us how much she missed us and had not seen Finn for a long time. Finn asked me if I was okay with having her dinner, and I begrudgingly agreed as I didn't want to be rude to my Sil. While we were having a good meal, Deborah, seemingly out of the blue, started talking about how she absolutely detested cheating partners and cheaters were nothing but useless pieces of crap. We looked at her curiously, thinking where she was going with this when Deborah looked me square in the face and asked me how it felt to be a useless piece of crap. My brows furrowed in confusion as Deborah began to yell, accusing me of having an affair with my coworker Matt. She started pulling out some pictures she had taken of me and one of my coworkers and waved them around, insisting that she had caught us red-handed. I knew I had never been unfaithful to Finn. As I examined the pictures, anyone could clearly see that they were just innocent snapshots of us having coffee or lunch occasionally due to the long queues at my workplace cafeteria. My coworker and I sometimes opted to grab a quick lunch outside. Deborah twisted these casual moments, captured in the photos, into something they were not, evidence of an affair. The reality was far from her unfounded accusations, and I felt a surge of annoyance at her attempts to tarnish my integrity and strain my relationship with Finn. Before I could speak, my husband, shocked and visibly upset, stepped in to defend me. He asked Deborah why she was following me around and taking pictures of me without my consent with my coworkers. She started justifying this by saying how she wanted to investigate me to ensure that I wasn't trying to take away his money. Finn firmly told Deborah that her claims were baseless and that she was creating unnecessary drama. He tried to reason with her, asking her to stop spreading lies and trying to harm our relationship. Deborah, however, was relentless. She continued to accuse me of cheating and manipulating Finn. She went so far as to claim that she was only trying to protect him from me as I was nothing more than a gold digger. The atmosphere grew tense as her accusations intensified. Then she pulled out a screenshot of a conversation she claimed to have had with an employee from my workplace on Facebook. In the screenshot, Deborah had asked this particular employee if I and the coworker in question were having an affair, and the employee had responded that we seemed suspiciously close, suggesting it might be possible. She shoved the screenshot under Finn's nose, insisting he needed to protect himself, painting me as a threat to our marriage. Finn, glancing at the screenshot, wore a perplexed expression. Despite my sincere assurance that the pictures were innocent moments, his trust seemed to waver, caught in the web of family loyalty and conflicting narratives. I started to protest that this was absolutely ridiculous and Deborah was just making up random lies to ruin our marriage. To my surprise, Finn turned to me and asked me if I really had nothing to do with this man in the pictures. I was absolutely shocked that he was even asking me such a question, as I had never given him a reason to doubt me throughout our entire relationship. Deborah started to taunt me that I was speechless because I knew that her accusations were all true and I had been caught in my own lies. I started yelling at Deborah to get out of the house, but Finn told me that I couldn't talk to his sister this way. Taken aback by his words, I told him that if he didn't believe me, then he could walk out of this house with his sister because there was nothing I could do at this point to change his mind. I could feel the tension in the room escalating as Deborah continued her relentless accusations of how I had stolen her brother, so I could live this luxurious life and I never loved him. Her words were starting to seriously piss me off. I couldn't believe just how crazy Deborah could be to make up such ridiculous lies to ruin our marriage. Realizing that I had nothing to lose at this point, with a smirk, I turned to tell her that she had an unhealthy obsession with Big Bro, and she was going to extreme lengths this time. She attempted to deny it, but I cut her off, telling her how sad it was that her own family wasn't as obsessed with her as she was with everyone else's lives. I then went on to reveal how her big brother Finn and her parents had decided to change their will. They were taking steps to potentially redirect the entire family inheritance away from her right under her nose. Deborah's face transformed from the fury of accusations to a mix of disbelief and shock. She stammered, trying to process the bombshell about her family potentially altering their will. Her eyes widened as the weight of the news sank in, and for a moment, the room fell silent. Finn attempted to signal me to halt the conversation. Likely feeling remorseful, however, I reminded him that just moments ago he was siding with Deborah, blaming me for an imaginary affair. I asserted that he had no right to ask me to stop. Caught in the crossfire of family drama and unfolding revelations, he looked like a deer caught in headlights, exchanging uneasy glances between Deborah and me. The air was charged with tension as everyone grappled with the sudden turn of events. I then went on to tell both Finn and Deborah to get out of the house. I told them that I had enough of their drama and made it clear that I couldn't tolerate it any longer. I told Finn not to return until he apologized for believing his sister's unfounded accusations. Finn didn't protest and escorted his sister out of the house. My in-laws have been calling me concerned since the incident. I haven't checked their messages, nor have I picked up their calls. I feel emotionally drained after what happened. Aita for telling the truth to my crazy sil after she set my marriage ablaze? Update 1. Thank you for everyone's comments on my post. Taking everyone's advice, I have decided to file an HR complaint against my coworker who apparently talked with Deborah about my alleged affair with Matt. I haven't reached out to this particular coworker directly as I don't have the strength for any more confrontations. Despite what some of you have commented, I don't think that Deborah is capable enough to fabricate an entire screenshot by herself, as she isn't that smart. Hopefully, the truth is going to be out when our HR confronts my coworker regarding the screenshot. Update 2. It's been a week since Deborah tried to ruin my marriage, and it's been hell. Thank you to everyone who comforted and helped me. Still kind of in limbo. I haven't slept more than a couple of hours each night and definitely needed a few quiet rest days. HR finally talked to my co-worker about the mess. Turns out Deborah fed her some twisted stories, and she fell for it. The co-worker owned up to her mistake right away, admitting she fabricated the story about Matt and me, believing it wouldn't lead to any consequences. Our workplace, known for its strict policies against gossip, reprimanded the co-worker severely. She faced a 1-month termination, highlighting the seriousness of spreading unfounded rumors. This was a lesson for everyone about the consequences of believing and spreading baseless gossip. This not only cleared my name but also showed how destructive false info can be. Finn had attempted to reach out to me several times over the week. Yesterday, I finally agreed to have a sit-down with him and his parents. I firmly told him that I didn't want Deborah to be present, and he immediately agreed, assuring me that he would make sure that she wasn't there when I came to their place. Finn, trying to navigate the aftermath, looked remorseful as we sat down with his parents. We delved into the issue, addressing the damage Deborah had caused. Finn apologized sincerely, acknowledging that he had got carried away that night, but when sat down and thought about this entire ordeal with a clear mind, he realized just how ridiculous her accusations were. His parents, equally upset, expressed their concern and apologized to me for how she had impacted our relationship. With a sense of vulnerability, Finn admitted that he had let family loyalty cloud his judgment during the confrontation. He confessed that he had acted impulsively, and now realizing the gravity of Deborah's actions, he deeply regretted not trusting me. Finn assured me that he would confront Deborah and set boundaries with her. We discussed seeking couples counseling to rebuild trust and address the lingering effects of her accusations. His parents pledged their support, acknowledging the need for the family to come together to resolve this messy situation. Finn then told me that he understood why I shared the info about his parents' will with Deborah, as he knew that I was trying to hurt her the way she was hurting us. He didn't hold a grudge against me for that and understood where I was coming from. My in-laws also agreed that they didn't mind that I had revealed the truth to her, as they were planning on having a conversation with her regarding this anyway. Although I appreciated all of their honesty, I also knew that I couldn't let Deborah ruin my life any further. I declared my decision to cut off ties with Deborah, emphasizing the importance of protecting my well-being in our marriage. I explained that her toxic influence had reached a breaking point and communicated my intent to prioritize our marriage and emotional health from now on over maintaining a connection with someone who had repeatedly shown a penchant for stirring chaos in our lives. Finn, still grappling with the aftermath, supported my choice, realizing the necessity of distancing ourselves from Deborah's destructive behavior. My in-laws looked a bit sad about my decision to cut off Deborah, but agreed that she had gone too far and I had every right to end my relationship with her. Since this conversation, I feel much lighter and happier today. Finn is going to be back at our place after his short work trip tomorrow. I have missed him despite our fight and can't wait to spend time with him tomorrow. Update 3. It's been 5 months since my last update. As expected, Deborah did reach out to me a few months ago. In her message, she dodged any acknowledgement of the pain she had caused us. She justified her baseless accusations by claiming a misguided sense of protection for her big brother, continuing to insist that I was a threat to their family. The message was written with more accusations, like how I was forcing her brother to not talk to her and I had destroyed her family, conveniently painting herself as the victim in the situation while ignoring the chaos she had unleashed in the first place. Deborah's lack of genuine remorse or understanding of the gravity of her actions was evident, further solidifying my decision to maintain distance from someone who seemed incapable of self-reflection or empathy. In the months that have followed, Finn and I have focused on rebuilding trust in our marriage. We attended couples counseling to address the lingering effects of Deborah's accusations. The sessions helped us communicate better and understand each other's perspectives. Slowly but surely, our relationship started to heal. We have remained steadfast in our decision to cut ties with Deborah. Despite occasional attempts from Finn's parents to mediate, we have stood firm to protect our emotional well-being. Life has settled into a more peaceful routine. Work, family, and shared moments became our focus. We have found solace in each other, leaving behind the chaos Deborah had brought into our lives. Finn and I have grown stronger as a couple, learning to navigate challenges together. While the scars from Deborah's actions still linger, our commitment to each other prevails. Every day, the decision to prioritize our marriage over a toxic relationship has proved to be the right one, fostering a newfound sense of stability and happiness in our lives. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Wife got pregnant while my best friend was living with us. But the thing is, I had a secret vasectomy done to me years ago, so I simply played along until I had proof of their affair. So I recently discovered that my wife Devin was having an affair with my best friend Jeff, and I found this out because she's pregnant. You might ask yourself, OP, but if she's pregnant, how do you know? Well, I got a vasectomy in my previous marriage, so I know my wife has been screwing around on me because there's no way she can get pregnant from me. And some of you might be thinking, OP, you can still get pregnant with a vasectomy. Don't come at me with that. There's a less than 1% chance that I got her pregnant, and we've taken tests since then to prove that it's not mine. So there's some context. My best friend Jeff recently went through a divorce earlier this year, and I grew up with this guy since we were in grade school. I mean, we're basically brothers. We were both the best man at each other's weddings, we went to college together and took the same courses, we ended up in the police force together and stationed at the same place. You get it? So I first got married when I was 20, and my ex-wife Trish and I were high school sweethearts. I was the small-town hockey star who everyone knew was going somewhere. She was the smart, cute, funny pastor's daughter who everyone loved. Anyways, we ended up having our daughter when we were 21 and my son when we were 24. We had a miscarriage in between the two. After my son, my ex-wife and I decided we didn't want any more children, so we decided that I should get an ectomy. So, without telling anyone, I didn't feel like I had to announce it to the world. I went in for a simple lunch surgery and went back to work, and no one was the wiser. My ex-wife and I ended up drifting apart, and we separated amicably. It's not that we didn't love each other. We did, but the love just changed. She had started up this home organization business after the kids were old enough to be a bit more independent, and she got really successful with that and wanted to make the brand bigger, so she put in a lot of time with that. And I was still really passionate about what I was doing, and I was getting deployed all over Canada to teach and whatnot, so we both just kind of drifted apart, but we still fully supported each other in the lives we were both leading. My ex-wife and I are still really great friends, and we see each other constantly, and all of us have even shared holidays together. Anyways, Devin and Trish were on good terms, and they even went out and did things without me too. They had a great relationship. So then this brings me to Jeff and his wife. We all spent a lot of time together, and we did a Friendsmas thing and a Friendsgiving every year. We all spent a lot of time camping together. We did a lot together. And so when he said that he was getting a divorce from his wife Amy, it sort of hit the friend group hard, and we tried our best to support them in whatever way they needed. However, Amy really gave it to Jeff hard and was saying that she was going to take the kids to Ontario to be with her parents, who still live there. So naturally, Jeff was devastated on hearing this, and he tried his best to keep his kids here. But alas, she ended up moving there and did, in fact, take the kids with her. So it was rough to see him go through, and it was hard to see him being treated like that and getting his kids taken away. So in this time, he really leaned on us, and because they had to sell the house, we let Jeff stay with us for a little bit until he landed on his feet again. Well, a little turned into a little bit longer than we would have liked. Then Devin sort of had this idea that we could renovate the garage and turn it into a suite, so I complied, and Jeff was really gracious about it and helped out and spent a lot of time making it his own. Whatever, it was a bit of an annoyance, but I wanted to help in any way that I could, and it was better than him staying in our house. At least he was out of the house and in his own space so that Devin and I could have proper alone time without worrying if Jeff was going to hear, if you catch my drift. Okay, so now Devin. Devin worked as a dispatch agent for a little bit, and that's how we met, and the job is actually really stressful, so she managed to stick it out for 2 years, and now she works as a hairstylist and loves it. Devin and I met a few months after the divorce with Trish was finalized. We hit it off really well. She's actually 8 years older than I am. She said that she didn't want any kids, and she was really fun, like really fun and wild. We had our motorcycles and went on hunting trips. She was like one of the guys but like a chick, and a chick that wanted to get down and dirty with you, lol. That's a horrible explanation, but you get it. She was fun. She was everything that I needed at the time. We had the same interests and we had a lot of the same hobbies. And because she had mentioned that she didn't want any kids, I thought, wow, great, I don't have to worry about telling her that I had a vasectomy, so the topic never came up. Yes, I know I'm a horrible person. I never told her that I had a vasectomy, but because the topic of kids never really came up, that was sort of it. She obviously was the best stepmom to my kids, and she had always said that that was enough. She wasn't even the marrying type until I just felt like, yeah, I want to spend the rest of my life with this woman, and it just feels right. It's not like she was against marriage or anything, but she just didn't expect it, you know? She didn't need to get married. She was so chill that way, and I love that about her. So we ended up having this small, intimate backyard wedding in a fire with a barbecue, and it was perfect. It was perfect for us and all we needed. So yeah, shortly after we got married, Jeff went through his divorce, he was staying with us, blah blah. Now, we worked together, but we weren't on the same team, so he had different shifts than I did, and Devin had a really lax schedule too, so a lot of times Dev and Jeff were at home together alone. And at first, I thought it was just Devin being helpful and a good friend. But after a while, well, it definitely started getting weird. I'd text her during the day and ask how her day was doing, and she'd say, "Oh, Jeff and I are just out for lunch," or "Jeff and I are just out running errands," and I'm like, "Kate, weird." But then they were going to movies together, and then they'd go to concerts together, and then when I was home, I saw little things that rubbed me the wrong way, like he'd touch her arm when she was talking to him. She'd touch his bicep when he made her laugh, she'd dish him up food, and she wouldn't dish me up food, and then she'd constantly bring him up like, "Oh, Jeff told me about this," or "Jeff said the funniest thing," and I was like, okay, red flag definitely raised my suspicions. Then, even though he was literally up in the garage suite, they'd text into the wee hours of the morning, and she'd be giggling and texting him, and there I'm laying next to her in bed, and honestly, I'm trying to start something up, trying to give her a massage or something, get in the mood, and she wouldn't be interested. She'd just keep texting him. So I just roll over and just fall asleep, and she'd be texting him. Then there would be little gifts here and there. He got her like bath stuff for the bathtub, and in one gift set there was massage oil, and after a week, I noticed that the bottle had been opened and used, but I didn't use it on her. At first, I chalked it up to maybe she used it for lotion or something, but the thing is this oil had a distinct smell, and I remember smelling it on Jeff a few times, but I never said anything. I was just sort of collecting all of this evidence and making mental notes. Then one day we're laying in bed late at night, and she turns to me and she's like, "I want a baby," and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "I think we should have a baby," and I'm like, "We agreed not to," and she's like, "I've just been thinking, and I think we should have a baby before we're both too old," and I'm like, "Devin, and she's like, "What do you mean? You don't know?" And I'm like, "Well, a baby is a lot. It takes a lot of time and energy," and then she got mad at me and she's like, "Don't treat me like your old child." And then I said that I thought we went over this before, and she's like, "We never really did," and I'm like, "I feel like it was just an unspoken thing, and I feel like you said that you were okay without kids and were good with being a stepmom," and she's like, "So I'm not allowed to change my mind? You won't let me be a mom?" And I'm like, that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I think we have to talk more about this, and maybe now isn't the best time. And she's like, "Well, what would make it a good time? When will you want to talk about it?" And I'm like, "Can we sleep on it and talk about it tomorrow and make time for this tomorrow?" And she got pissed and left the room. And yeah, I didn't have the heart in that moment to tell her I had a vasectomy, and it would be foully impossible for me to give her a child unless I went and got it reversed, and even then it's not 100%, and something was just sketchy about the whole conversation. Anyways, I thought it was weird that now all of a sudden she wanted a baby. She had never ever shown interest in anything like this before. My alarms are going off. I'm pretty sure I know what happened, but I need to play along a little bit here. The next day I go eyes and I'm like, "Yes, I'm game. Let's make a baby." She literally jumps for joy, and we try 5 times that day. Then about a week later, she hands me this box, and in this box is a positive pregnancy test. I could have cried. I was stunned. I knew it couldn't have been mine, and I'm not an expert or anything, but can you find out a week after? I don't think it works that way. Anyways, let me know if I'm wrong here, but the point is, I had a hunch, and I knew the baby wasn't mine. I knew it must have been Jeff's. So I started watching them closer. Both Devin and I had agreed not to tell anybody that we were pregnant right away. But when I was watching Devin and Jeff interact, I caught him grazing her belly at the side of my eye. I pretended like I didn't see, but he for sure touched her belly in a lovingly way. There it was. A few weeks after that, she tells me she's going to her doctor's for the first little exam to see how far along she was, and that Jeff was going to drive her because he had to do some running around in the area anyways, and I was like, no need. I'm taking time off because I want to be there, and she sort of smiled and was like, "You don't have to do that," and I was like, "I'm the father, I want to be there," and I kind of smiled, and she weakly grinned and was like, "Great, of course you do." So yeah, we ended up going to the appointment, and the doctor does her thing with her and asks her when she thinks she's conceived. She gives her the date that we did the old deed. There's an ultrasound, and then the doctor comes back and says that she's 12 weeks, and I'm like, "How is that possible?" And I look at her and she's like, "Doc, is this for real?" And she's acting all shocked and everything, and the doc is like, "Yeah, seems like you have a miracle," and I was like, "What?" And I pretend to be totally ecstatic to not tip her off that I knew anything I shouldn't. Then we go home, and when we're home I'm still pretending. And she's like, "Oh, it was meant to be. What a miracle. I'm so excited." We end up having sex again that night, and I turned over and fell asleep. I had the next day off, but I knew she had to get up early because she had a wedding to do. I knew that was my chance to pack her shit and lock Jeff out of the S. I knew Jeff also had to get up and go to work, so I did just that. I packed all of her garbage, I stockpiled it into our trailer, and I parked it on the street. I had a spare key to Jeff's suite, so I went in there and packed up his stuff too and threw it into the same trailer. Then I put this big old lock on it so that he wouldn't get in. So Devin comes home first and sees this trailer parked there. I had changed the locks on the doors and the password to the garage so she couldn't get in. She's standing there, and she's banging on the front door. I talk to her through our doorbell camera, and I tell her that we're done, and I know the baby isn't mine. She's saying that I'm out of my absolute mind and calling me crazy, and she's bawling and making a big scene, and I can see our neighbors looking out their doors and windows, and I'm like, this baby isn't mine, it's Jeff's, and she's like, don't be insane, why would it be Jeff's? And I'm like, you tell me, and she's like, how could this baby not be yours? And I'm like, there's a less than 1% chance, and I know that because I have a vasectomy, and she literally dropped her purse and her bags onto the ground. She stood there in disbelief, and she's like, let me explain, and she starts trying to babble on, and I'm like, save it, I know it's not mine, and I'm like, we're done, it's over. I was nice enough to pack the trailer for you. Get out of here. And then she calls someone, and I'm guessing it's Jeff because then he shows up in a matter of minutes in his patrol car. He sees what's happening, and he sees the lock on the garage suite. He tells me that I'm losing my mind and that the kid couldn't possibly be his, and I'm like, I'll believe it when I see a paternity test. Edit. People have been asking how she never knew and how she didn't suspect not getting pregnant before. Well, she was on birth control pills for pauses, or so she told me. Supposedly she was in the process of swapping pill brands and just so happened to get pregnant with Jeff's baby. Bad timing. Not only that, but she had this thing against, well, man juice, to put it lightly. She was absolutely repulsed by it. She refused that I ever finished in her, and she rarely ever pleased me in other ways because the sight of it disgusted her. I won't go into details, but yeah. Update. So getting divorced again. Another failed marriage feels like absolute dump. But what can you do? In the midst of the divorce, Devin did end up getting a paternity test, and it only confirmed what I had believed. The baby is in fact Jeff's, and I guess he knew all along and was willing to play along and thought that he could just live in the garage suite forever and raise his baby as Uncle Jeff from afar. A buddy of mine did me a huge favor and got Jeff transferred to a small northern town. Literally in nowhere. Devin, I guess, followed him up there. She was just trying to pretend that I impregnated her so that I didn't catch on to the affair she was having with Jeff. But turns out my little secret snip saved me from raising a kid that wasn't my own. By the time she realized she was pregnant, though, it was a bit late. Trish and I talk every day. She checks in on me and she's being an absolute sweetheart. I'm spending a lot of time with my kids and just trying to get by and be the best dad that I can be. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Caught my wife cheating when I saw that she bought her boyfriend the same ring she said was for me. I'm 57M, married for over 3 decades to Jennifer, 51F. We have a son and 2 daughters, all are adults now and living on their own. I work for a pharmaceutical company with a great payout. Our lifestyle has been decent even with a single income and 3 children. Life didn't used to be that complicated. Earlier, a year and a half back, my company decided to set up another production unit in the neighboring town, and I was appointed as one of the core members to be leading the setup. I was leading the manufacturing department when I got the offer. I discussed it with Jenny before accepting it. All our children had moved out by then, and it was just us. I didn't want to leave her alone, but she assured me that she would manage fine. It was a temporary project until the setup was running smoothly. The company had taken a year's time for this setup completion. The pay for this duration was almost 2.5x of my current salary, which was a big deal. After measuring all the pros and cons, we decided that I would take it up. That payout would help me retire earlier and we can enjoy the last phase of our life comfortably. Next month is my 30th anniversary, and I was planning to make it super special for Jenny. I mean, yes, 3 decades is a milestone, plus I had to make up for my absence due to work commitments, so I decided to gift her a diamond pendant she has been eyeing for a long time. I went to one of the oldest jewelry shops in the town. They showed me their latest and classiest collection, but I was not able to finalize one. I showed Jenny's photo to the store guy and asked them to suggest something that would suit her beauty bones. He was surprised to see her and asked me if she was my wife. I said, damn yes. He said she was the regular customer for many years and often visited the store. I said, yeah, I know, that's why I came to the shop. I asked him if there was anything else because the way he reacted didn't seem like a happy surprise. He apologized for his reaction and said no. I wasn't expecting Jenny to be your wife. I never seen you accompanying her. Hands got confused. He was stammering, and his responses sounded somewhat not satisfied. I calmed him down and asked him what was the matter. He said Jenny had visited the store a week prior and she had placed an order for a men's sapphire ring. He apologized to me a million times, saying he might have ruined the surprise for her. He pleaded that I act surprised when she gives me the ring, or else she might report him to the manager and he would be fired for being a big-mouthed. I chuckled and asked him not to worry about it. I was over the moon, thinking Jenny was equally excited about the anniversary and that she had been planning surprises for me. Next, I made the reservation for a beach holiday. I booked a resort on a private island in Miami. All the arrangements were made for an exotic holiday by the ocean. It was all a surprise after making all the arrangements. I was waiting for the anniversary day to arrive. All my happiness crashed down yesterday when I saw a sapphire ring on my friend Lena's husband. Jenny, Lena, and I have been a close aide for the last 30 years. Actually, we had a group of 5 close friends, but 2 of them lost touch eventually, but we 3 are still super tight. Lena has been the toughest person I have ever met. Discussing her background would have been futile here, but it holds importance in this case. Lena's father was a wealthy businessman. 3 years back, however, some of his top management guys conspired to siphon the company's money, leading to the company's shutdown due to compliance issues. Her father suffered a heart attack and got paralyzed due to that trauma. Since then, she has stepped up to take care of her parents and has been bravely fighting court cases to clean her father's reputation. Yesterday, Jenny and I visited Lena to check on her dad's condition. Everything was normal until her husband Marcus, 52M, arrived. I don't know if it was his flamboyant personality or the flashy ring itself that caught my attention. I couldn't pretend to not notice it and asked him about the ring. If I had not known about that ring earlier, I would have never noticed their reactions in body language. Maris and Jenny looked at each other, and then he curled his lips with a smile and said he bought it for himself. Lena seemed to be annoyed at this. I mean, it goes without saying that she has been going through a difficult time managing her family and her parents along with court cases, and in that situation her husband is spending bombs on a ring, and that too for himself. Oh yeah, one more thing. Marcus used to work at Lena's father's company, and ever since the company went bankrupt, he's been a lazy bum sucking onto her income. Now that I know the reality that the ring was gifted by my lovely wife makes the situation even worse. Why would she give such expensive gifts to Lena's husband without anyone knowing? There has to be something. I added 2 plus 2, and now it makes sense to conclude that they both are fooling around. Now the thing is, I just cannot confront this based on my math. I need proper evidence. I could have teamed up with Lena on this mission, but she's already going through enough and I don't want to trouble her without evidence. I have to leave for work tomorrow, and it disgusts me to think that as soon as I leave, Marcus is going to come banging my wife. I'm going nuts thinking about the entire stuff. Update 1. Hey, I left the last post midway. I kinda got lost in my thoughts. I got one comment asking if I missed reading out the red flag or if there was none. Let me tell you, although I still have no information on when and how, I know for sure that their cheating game would have started after my transfer to the new plant. Lena and Marcus have been married for 6 years with no kids. I don't know what Lena saw in that lazy bum that she served him a fortune on a platter. I mean, he got an eminent position in the company without his ass. After the transfer, for the first 5 to 7 months, I was mostly staying at the new manufacturing unit. The company provided us with the stay and everything. I used to drive home twice or thrice a month. Initially, Jenny was sulking and complaining about our limited couple time, but eventually that stopped. I thought she got used to the situation. It was kind of relief for me, but now I think it was not. It was a sign of a bigger problem. Guys, making this simple for all of you partners, not complaining about the couple time is actually a red flag and not a sign of maturity when you love and care for someone you crave to spend time with them. After the installation of the first plant at the site, my workload got slightly easier. I was now coming home every weekend, but Jenny was still in that distant mode. I spoke to her several times regarding her changing attitude, and she pinned the blame on me. She said she wants to remain distant from me until my project concludes and I move back because it hurts her to see me leaving on Monday after spending quality time for the weekend. Guess what I bought her? Reason. It made sense to me. That's what we tend to blindly trust our partners, and that's how we land up here. Our sex life became non-existent for the same reason every time I initiated she would snap at me saying she doesn't want to ignite her sex life when she can't get it when she wants. Sometimes I used to get irritated by this, but she assured me that once my project was over we get back to our usual routine. She was like, you turn me horny and then you leave me alone for the whole week and it becomes difficult for me, so I don't want to have anything at all for this period of time. And guess what I bought this to? Wanna smack my head? Me too. All this was also the reason I had planned something special for this anniversary to cover for my absence and to make her feel special. Until now, I was feeling so blessed to have such an understanding wife. I was so grateful to her for supporting me in every way. Now we know the truth behind her support anyways. I'm back in my plan and I don't want to go back home anytime soon. ATL is not without a plan to catch their infidelity. I'm yet to work on the plan. If anyone has an idea, kindly pitch in, would much appreciate the help. Update 2. Reposting the thread again, not sure what happened that my last update got deleted twice. I came back to my work to clear my head and to strategize next. I got the suggestion from you guys seriously to gather the evidence first before the confrontation. I bought some sound capturing device with a recorder and decided to plant them at the places where they would likely meet the following weekend. I went home. We were anyways distant from each other. Sex life was null, so avoiding her wasn't a big deal. I fixed one tiny capturing device inside her clutch bag and placed the connecting recorder inside her car. The two other devices I placed in my bedroom and one on the living room couch, hid the recorder behind the bookshelf. I tested both the devices and it worked fine. After that, I patiently waited for the device to collect the relevant evidence. It was almost a week until I got some concrete recordings. Marcus hasn't visited my house in my absence, so there were no recordings with both their voices. It was just her voice on the calls. The information was in bits and pieces, but the overall crux of the conversation was that they were saying I love you to each other, talking about their desires and pleasures. That very weekend, Lena was to travel with her parents to their countryside farm to sort out some legal matters. Ideally, Marcus should have accompanied them, but he was more interested in using Lena's absence as an opportunity to bang my wife. He insisted that Jenny catch up on that weekend, but she refused. She said I was home and didn't want me to get suspicious of her absence. They were whining about the fact that I was visiting home more often and they were not getting enough time for themselves. All these conversations were happening in my bedroom while I was mowing the lawn outside. Petty, they talked about this on Saturday morning and I heard it in the afternoon. I went out of the study and told her that something emergency came up at work and I would be leaving after dinner. She nodded. After that, I was waiting for her phone call with Marcus, but the recorder didn't fetch anything. After dinner, I left. She came to see me off outside, hugged and kissed me. I wanted to push her off, but resisted. I drove off. The recorder didn't fetch any data for a long time. That scared me off. I thought she found it and destroyed it, but after a while, I got a notification that something is getting recorded. It was a phone call with her mom, just normal stuff, nothing alarming. I kept waiting for her to speak to Marcus and discuss their next meeting. Yeah, I was heavily preying on them. I reached my company's site and dozed off. My anxiety had torn me off. I woke up on Sunday morning and the first thing I did was check the data. Found it. She had called them after midnight saying she felt lonely, and they decided on meeting the next day before indulging in phone sex. It was harrowing to listen to those words. I had enough information to catch them red-handed, but their conversation didn't reveal the place. They already had a decided place. Maybe I noted the time they were scheduled to meet. I rushed back home wanting to follow her car. God knows what was I thinking. I didn't even check if I'd be able to make it on time. I just rushed. I was still on my way when I got a panic call from Lena. She was driving back home with her parents when her father had another attack. The ambulance was on the way. She was desperately calling Marcus, but he wasn't responding. She called me to check if I was nearby and could come at her rescue at that moment. I forgot about my plan and ran to help Lena. By the time I reached the hospital, her father was admitted and being treated. She broke down on seeing me. I wanted to tell her about her low-life husband, but how could I at that moment? She kept calling him, but no response. It was almost midnight when Marcus arrived. After seeing Lena's voicemails, he was shocked to see me. Lena's father was out of danger by then. She was definitely mad at him, but she softened when he gave her a reason for not responding. I couldn't bear to hear his excuse. I wanted to punch him because I knew he was lying. I went back to my car and played the recorder. The mic and Jenny's wallet recorded every filth these two had done that day. After a while, I saw Jenny come rushing to the hospital. She acted shocked at seeing me. I'm sure Marcus would have told her about me. She said Marcus informed her about Lena's dad, and she came to support her. She asked me when I came back. Lena said that she called me when Marcus didn't respond. Jenny was like, hey, why didn't you call me? I was home all day, could have come with you. Look at the audacity of her lying. I excused myself and drove back to my plant. I had worked the next day. I have my anniversary in 10 days, and I'm planning to gift a memoir to my wife. I'm in touch with Lena. Her dad is recovering, so hopefully I'll expose my wife and her loser AP in front of Lena. Update 3. That 10-day wait period was the hardest. I wanted to get done with it ASAP. On the day of the anniversary, I drove back home with the diamond pendant and divorce papers. My children were home. We had planned this to be a surprise for Jenny, but after discovering this truth, all the love turned into disgust. I went home late. My children arrived with their partners. Lena and Marcus were already present. The celebration had almost begun. I wanted to blurt out the truth the moment I saw Marcus, but held it up for the sake of my children. The cake was cut and champagne was rolled out. I gave her the diamond pendant I had bought. Jenny was delighted, but when she saw the name of the shop she turned pale and asked me when did I go there. She was worried that her truth might have come out from there, rightly so. I was quiet for most of the evening. I had texted Lena to stay back for a while. I had something to reveal after the children were gone. The children pushed off after dinner. Jenny was over the moon wearing the diamond. I told her I had something else for her. I pulled out the envelope and handed it to her. She jumped in excitement, saying holiday package. I smiled and asked her to open it. By the way, I canceled all the bookings for Miami when I got to know the truth. She opened the envelope and froze. She muttered, "This is a prank, right? You're not serious, right?" I nodded. I was serious. Lena sat there in shock. Marcus got the vibe of the situation and asked what's wrong. I played their recording tape on my phone. Jenny crashed down on the couch, burying her face and crying. The room was dead silent. Lena was in tears too, but that woman had seen so much hardship in life that she didn't mind another blow. She silently got up and left. Marcus followed her outside. After they left, I too started packing my stuff. Lena came to me crying, trying to hug me. She said, "Since you know the truth, you must know that I wanted to come out of this. I've been telling Marcus to stop this, but he insisted that we continue until you return." She was right. There were conversations where she was talking about breaking up, but Marcus was always successful in getting her on board for one last time. That's not the point that she wanted to end. The thing was, why did she even start? It was the same classic answer of "I was lonely, you were busy with work." First of all, cheating should be an excuse for anything. Second, I used to visit home ATLs twice a month, even during the initial days. Was that not enough for her to keep her legs closed? What about the women who see their husband after months and years? Do they turn hoe to satisfy themselves? I said I was going to head out and would wait for her to sign the papers. Meanwhile, I have a few more things to update, but that would be for later. Running out of time now. Thanks for reading this thread. Update 4. Let me pick up from where I left. That night, I packed my stuff and left the house. She pleaded with me for the sake of 30 years of marriage. She reminded me of all the tough times we had been together and how we had planned on spending our retirement life living in the camper by the woods. She was trying to emotionally manipulate me, and I was getting swayed by her to some extent, but I stood to my ground and held my resolve. I came to my company's condo for the night. The project setup is supposed to be wrapped up in a couple of months, after which I should have been back to my house now with the change in the situation. I wanted to stay away from that place. I requested my company's director to transfer me to the new site temporarily. He was curious about my request because last time I was nagging about letting me move back, and now I wanted to extend my stay. I briefly told him about my troubled marriage. He was empathetic and asked me to take some time off to clear my mind. I said I'll take it when I need it. 2 days later, I got a call from my son asking what's wrong with Mom. He said that Jenny had been crying over the phone and asking them to come home. She didn't give him the reason, just asked him to come over along with his sisters. I called Jenny to ask what was she up to. She was bawling. She said her guilt was weighing her down, and she wanted to confess in front of the children. She asked me if I could be present. I said I don't want to intervene in her plans, and she could do whatever she wanted. I don't have the details of what had happened at their gathering, but my elder daughter came to meet me after a week. She asked me if I wanted to stay with her for some time. I said I was doing fine and would visit her when I needed them. Update about Lena. I've been in touch with her. She has been battling too many battles alone. I asked her if she needed any help, and she said no, she would handle it. She had kicked out Marcus that very night. He was a leech. I have never been fond of this guy. In fact, when Lena told me that she wanted to marry him, I cautioned her. He didn't have a proper job. Although he had a college degree, he had a callous attitude. He conveniently joined Lena's family business to lurk around then. He smartly used my absence to get into my bed. He is an opportunistic, I would say. She informed me that Jenny visited her and fell on her knees asking for forgiveness. She owned up to her sin, but also pinned the blame on Marcus for luring her into this. Lena believes this to be true because she has noticed Marcus going at Jenny multiple times even before their affair started. There were even fights between them regarding Jenny, but Marcus always assured her that he was not attracted to Jenny at all. I feel Lena got a harder blow faced the betrayal from her husband and her best friend. She's proceeding with the divorce. As I update this, her parents are supporting her through this. I know she would sail through this for the tough woman she is. I bought a camper for myself yesterday to travel and live in whenever to break the monotony of my condo life. I need to do some renovation to suit my comfort. Writing here has been working like therapy to me, and I will continue doing so as I move forward. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Wife of 20 years asked for a hall pass to sleep with someone else, but then I caught her on a date with him, so I sent his wife roses with the restaurant name. My wife and I have been together for 20 years. We met in our freshman year of high school, and we have been together ever since. She and I both lost our virginity to one another. We went to prom together, and we even went to the same college. After graduation, we got married right after we graduated from college, and we settled down to start our life together. Having a family was always something we were looking forward to, so once we had good jobs, we decided to start. Fast forward about 11 years and we have 2 kids, we own our own home, and we are on a fast track to retiring early so we can travel and do all of the things we never had the chance to. I thought that we were living the dream life. All of that came crashing down when my sister-in-law was diagnosed with lung cancer. She was my wife's best friend, and she took it very hard. She was with her every step of the way while she was fighting as best as she could. But in the end, she passed away. It was a huge blow to the entire family, myself included. It's such a cliché, but she was just a beam of light in the world. My wife took it harder than anyone else. My sister-in-law was who my wife would go to when she needed to talk about anything. They would go shopping together, and they knew everything about each other. I was there for my wife while she grieved the loss, and I helped her get over the worst time of her life. After about 6 months of mourning, my wife started to get back to herself. She had all of my sister-in-law's journals and her notebooks, and she read through all of them while she was grieving. I couldn't even begin to process the types of emotions she must have been feeling, so I just tried to be supportive and lend an ear when she needed it. One thing that got to my wife was feeling like she hadn't done anything with her life. Her sister was taken way too soon, and through the journal entries, my wife realized that her sister felt like she didn't get to do enough in her life. I guess when my wife read all of that, she thought that her sister would have wanted her to do the opposite. She told me that she had been inspired to start living. She wanted to travel, go skydiving, and just enjoy the life that she had while she had it. I wholeheartedly agreed with it. That's why I've been working 60 hours a week since I graduated college so we could try to retire early. Over the next few weeks, she started doing more things. For example, she started taking pottery classes because she'd always been interested in it. She had been teaching herself how to rock climb because she wanted to free climb, and she even scheduled a bungee jumping excursion for her and our son. She seemed to be leaning into this new lifestyle. I didn't think anything of it. I was happy for her because she was recovering from the loss of her sister. One night after she came home from the climbing gym, she was acting off. Before that, she had been very upbeat and excited about everything while she took on this new lease on life. After dinner, when the kids were in their rooms, she pulled me out to the patio where we shared a couple of glasses of wine and looked at the stars. Toward the end of our conversation, she brought up the possibility of both of us having a hall pass. For those of you that don't know, a hall pass in a committed monogamous relationship is a one-time opportunity for both of the partners to have sex with someone out of the relationship. I was completely shocked by what she had suggested. Felt like it came out of nowhere. So I asked her about why she was bringing it up. She assured me that she loved me, but she felt like she might have been missing out on a part of her life because she had only ever been with me. She tried to say it in a way where I wouldn't be hurt, but it was impossible not to feel horrible when she said that. I told her that I wasn't supportive of the idea. She and I had been married for 20 years, and I didn't understand why it was a problem all of a sudden. I didn't want to sleep with anyone else, and I wasn't okay with her sleeping with anyone else. We were about to go back inside, but I stopped and I asked her if there was someone she had been interested in sleeping with. She was hesitant to tell me the truth, but after a few moments, She told me that there was another person who went to the climbing gym that she was attracted to. She told me that he had always been flirty, and recently he asked her out for drinks. I was assured that she said no and that she would tell him that she was married, but I still went to bed that night with a sour taste in my mouth. It took a few days for me to come to terms with what she had suggested. I was unbelievably hurt by it, but after some time I forgave her and we carried on as if the conversation never happened. After a week or so, she told me that the climbing gym offered a class to start working outdoors and that she wanted to sign up for it. One Saturday she went out early in the morning with the class. At least that's what I thought was happening. Our daughter had been entering those years where she started lying to us about where she was going so she could go to parties and hang out with friends we didn't approve of. So we told her to leave her location on Snapchat map so we could verify she was where she said. That same afternoon our daughter was supposedly going over to a friend's house. So I checked the maps to make sure she wasn't lying. Everything was good on our daughter's end, but I noticed that my wife's avatar was in the heart of the city. I was a little confused because I had been told that she was going to park about 30 minutes outside of the city. I zoomed in on the location and saw that she was at a bar. I tried to rationalize it like she was just hanging out with some of the other people from the climbing gym after they got back from their climb, but I had a sinking feeling in my gut that I couldn't ignore. I remembered what she had said about the guy from her climbing gym asking her to go out for drinks. I didn't think it was that far of a stretch to wonder if she was there with him. I was home alone in the bar that she was at. Only happened to be about a 15-minute walk from the house, so I grabbed the dog and we took a walk. I kept my eyes on the map every so often just to make sure she was still there, and she wasn't leaving. When I got to the bar, I looked in through the windows and I saw my wife sitting at a table with a man. They were both leaning close together and smiling from ear to ear as they chatted. The man reached across the table and grabbed my wife's hand, and my wife leant him. Of course, hand-holding isn't necessarily cheating, but it was an indication that maybe there was something more going on. I went home before my wife saw me there, and I waited for her to get back. The entire time I waited, I didn't know if I was going to confront her about it or try to dig around on my own. She came home, and before she even said anything to me, she went right to the shower. I tried to grab her to have a conversation, but she just told me that she was gross and sweaty from climbing. That solidified in my head that something happened while she was with that man. She had dropped her gym bag down near our bed, and I noticed that her phone was still inside. I pulled it out and looked through it to see if I could find any information about who that man was. I searched the name of the bar in her text messages, and I found a chat between her and an unsaved number. I scrolled back to the beginning of the conversation, which happened to be about a week before she asked me about the hall pass. I skimmed through the rest of the messages looking for keywords that would indicate an affair. Eventually I found a few exchanged pictures and some explicit messages. Then I saw the plans for them to get together at the bar. They even came up with a lie to tell me and his partner together. I had no idea who that guy was, but I was able to find out by looking through the climbing gym social media. They had posted a few pictures with some of the clients, and he was clearly in one. He was tagged in it and everything. I did some digging and found out that he was married with a newborn baby. I was disgusted by what I saw. Hurt doesn't even begin to describe the pain that I felt. I had been with my wife for 20 years, and she was willing to throw all of that away because she wanted to sleep with another man. I was furious, and I was so disgusted by the foul actions both of them had done. At the end of their message chain with no context was the name of a restaurant with a date and time. A week had passed since I discovered my wife was cheating on me, and I had come up with a plan to catch her the ACT. While I was thinking about it, I realized that the wife of her affair partner deserved to know as well. When the day of the meeting was supposed to take place, I sent his partner's wife a dozen roses with the information for the restaurant on the card. I hoped that it would be a way to trick her into thinking he had a surprise plan for her. I waited outside of the restaurant and I saw her head toward it. I followed her inside, and we both noticed our partners holding hands at the same time. She rushed right over to him and started yelling at him in front of everyone. My wife was shocked to see me, but she jumped up and tried to tell me that it wasn't what it looked like. Then I asked her to explain the text messages and she went silent. I told her that I would be ending everything between us and that she could expect to see me in court. We spent the next 8 months in a divorce battle over what happened. The biggest issue that we had was custody. We both wanted primary custody of our children, but in the end, we were given joint custody. I was able to keep the house, and she was entitled to no spousal payment from me. Her affair partner was also divorced, and he was forced to pay child support and alimony to his ex. My ex and I only recently finished the divorce proceedings and were finally done with each other. I honestly don't know what to do from here. I had only been with one woman, and she stabbed me in the back, and I'm not sure how to move forward. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Found out the kids I had been raising for 7 years weren't mine, so I got revenge on my wife by doing this. I'm a 32-year-old man who started dating my wife, who's now 27, right after she graduated college. Early on, I will fully admit we had a bit of a rocky relationship. She was fresh out of college and still a little immature, and this led to some pretty frequent fighting, nothing physical, just arguments, and at one point before we were married we had one that turned into a temporary breakup. We spent time away from one another, but we both decided that we missed one another, so after about 6 months apart we made up and got back together and got married. I love her very much, truly, and we have 2 children, a 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. Now, before we got married, I knew she was still somewhat attached to her ex-boyfriend, and I will fully admit I did snoop around in her phone once or twice to make sure they were no longer in contact with one another, but I found nothing. So as I said, I'm married to the love of my life and have 2 children that I love. I provide for my family in every way that I can. Unfortunately, this is where things start to go amiss. My wife had a best friend of many years who had been her roommate in college. One day, her best friends came over us. Usually when her friend is over, I give them some space as I don't want to intrude, but I happened to be in the kitchen when they started fighting. I'm not sure what started it, but their voices were already tense when I walked into the room, and within a minute they were having a full-on argument in front of me. As it got more and more heated, they just started spilling each other's secrets. At one point her best friend looked me dead in the eyes and told me she felt sorry for me since I'd been raising another man's children this whole time. Before I could ask her to elaborate, my wife threw her out of the house. I was obviously shocked to hear this and asked my wife what her friend had meant by that, but my wife played dumb, claiming she had no idea and that her friend was probably just saying whatever she could hurt her. Obviously, I was troubled by the statements her friend had made. I wanted to believe that my wife was loyal to me, I really did, but I had to be sure, so I went behind my wife's back and ended up speaking to her former best friend about what she had said during the fight. I had hoped I would get a simple "oh yes, I was drunk and angry," and just saying whatever I could, but what I got instead was her former friend showing me the emails the 2 of them had sent one another about my wife cheating on me with undeniable proof. My heart shattered. I went home. I decided to double-check just in case her former friend was somehow tricking me. I quietly slipped through the house to my wife's phone and saw that the conversations with her former friend had been deleted from her phone. This confirmed in my mind that she was absolutely hiding something. So I conducted DNA tests in both of my children, or perhaps I should say on both of the children, as the test came back confirming the kids were not mine. I was devastated. I had been raising Anan's children for the past 7 years thinking they were mine. Worse than that, my wife had lied to my face every day for the last 7 years. I'd had it. I confronted my wife and she denied it once more, claiming her former friend was a liar and just trying to destroy their home. Her tune immediately changed. When I showed her the test results, she broke down crying, begging me to stay and saying we could make it work. I was angry live at even, but the anger somehow came full circle and I felt remarkably calm. I tell her that I won't leave. I won't tell anyone about the kids or her infidelity, but on one condition: she must sign a post-natural agreement. I told her if she signed it, then yes, we could work it out. Basically, the agreement, which she did agree to sign, said that in the event of a divorce, I would get everything premarital and marital properties. If a divorce happens, everything I've ever earned is mine. She'd be left with nothing of my earnings and would not receive alimony. She signed it in the lawyer, and I began quietly preparing for divorce while pretending to be reconciling to buy me time for my exit, and then waited 2 months before serving her the divorce papers. I sued for full custody of the kids as well, because despite the genetics, they're well and truly my children, and I'd be damned if I let this dirty woman raise them. It worked because the judge ruled her an unfit parent and the divorce was finalized. I won majority custody of the children, although she is allowed the weekends, thus ruling out my need to pay child support. On the day the divorce was finalized, I made a post on my Facebook and revealed that my ex-wife cheated and betrayed me in the worst way possible, which is the reason for the divorce, though I didn't reveal that my children aren't biologically mine. My ex was in hysterics after that and kept pleading with me to take it down, but I didn't. It's such a minuscule pain compared to what I've had to endure because of her, so she needs to deal with that, I guess. Considering everything, I'm not in a bad place. My children do wonder why mommy isn't living with us anymore, but she was never as involved with them as I was, so they're fine without her for the most part. I'll tell them the truth with time, and it's going to be a slow journey of healing from here on. Thank you everybody for reading. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Cut off my physically and emotionally abusive mom 11 years ago, but she recently decided to throw my brother's baby shower and I decided to go. It was a show from start to finish. Editor's note: this post is tangentially related to the main post as it discusses some of OOP's background. I feel so lost. I don't know what to do when I feel sick. I, 41F, have been no contact with my mother for the past 11 years following years of physical, financial, and emotional abuse, as well as years of parentification. To give everyone an idea, my mother started abusing me physically and emotionally from the age of 6, which is when we both moved out of the extended family home. I never knew my father, so until I was 6, I grew up in a home with my mother, her 3 siblings, and her parents, my grandparents. Her physical abuse consisted of pinching and twisting until my skin blistered or tore, grabbing me by the arm or leg so hard she'd leave a bruise in the shape of her hand, throwing things at me like drinking glasses. A few times I couldn't go to school because the bruises were in places that were visible. Her emotional abuse was just as bad, telling me she'd throw me outside and lock the door so the boogeyman would take me if I didn't do exactly what she said. This was all when I was under the age of 10. The parentification started when I was 11, when my first half-brother was born. He was my sole responsibility, same when my second half-brother was born when I was 18. The financial abuse started when I was 12, when I had my first tutoring job. She'd take my money to buy alcohol. I would hide my money so I could buy food for me and brother or my cat since she'd forget and just say to eat whatever. Financially, she wrecked my credit. I let her use my credit card when I was 21, stupid, I know, to help her with her business. She said as my mother I owed it to her. Back then, I was still in the mindset I was taught growing up that family was what was most important. Now I know better and I've worked hard for years to build my credit back up. Back to my dilemma. Me and my BF 44M, have been invited to a friend's wedding. There's a chance my mother may be there. What makes me anxious is we have a 9.5-month-old baby girl. Yes, I had my baby late. There's a long tradition of the women in my family being abusive. I didn't want children for the longest time. I don't regret having my daughter. She's my world and I love her more than anything, and I know my mother would demand to see her if given the chance. The thought of my mother seeing her and just seeing my mother in general makes me feel sick with anxiety and on the verge of sobbing. These emotions come up because I think of my daughter being exposed to her, and all I can do is cry. On the other hand, I want to go to the wedding. My friends who are getting married know my history with my mother. I have a feeling they'd invite her to be polite. How can I get through this? Comments where OP has replied, Commenter: I'm sorry you had to deal with all that. While I can't tell friends who they should invite to their wedding, I would think good friends would be aware of the friction. I'd certainly ask if my mother had been invited. If they answer yes, then I would skip the wedding. If your mother is still drinking and abusive, there's no way I'd risk running into her again. Just not worth it. OP. Thank you, exactly. I don't want to be that person who dictates who they can invite. That's a good idea. I will ask if she was invited. Commenter: yes, she drinks less now. Now her heavy drinking resulted in her getting type 2 diabetes. Even with less alcohol, she apparently is still very manipulative and abusive according to my youngest half-brother. OP, wishing you luck. Don't blame you at all. My mother's father/grandfather is too familiar for him. Was a narcissist abuser too, had to control every and all situations, refused to give him any leeway, and never spoke to him for the last 10 or so years of his life. If I had kids, I would not have allowed him to be a part of their lives either. There is no need to have another generation subjected to the vital and physical violence. Go to the party, support your brother, you don't have to say a word to her. Make her look stupid by ignoring her. OP, thank you so much for your comment. I'm so sorry you had to go through that too. And you're absolutely right when you said there is no need to have another generation subjected to the vital and physical violence. My mother is the way she is because of her mother who was so much worse. That's why I had my daughter later in life. I was child-free out of fear of being like them, but my stepdad and boyfriend both told me the same thing. I know how not to parent. Mini update. I don't know if this is how we update, but I'm going to do it anyway, LOL. Thank you to everyone who commented, and you all had the same advice, so I contacted the bride last night. She wrote me back this morning. She did not invite my mother. She knows a little bit of my history with my mother and said she rarely speaks to her. She wants me and my stepfather there. He too would not want my mother there. He went through a lot of abuse too at my mother's hand, so my friend wanted us to have a good time and is not inviting my mother. Thank you all again so very much for reading my post. I was so afraid of being that person who causes drama over who is/isn't invited and didn't want to cause my friend stress that I started imagining all possible scenarios of what could happen if she was that and spiraled into an emotional crying mess. After all your comments, some ginger AA hug from my husband and baby, I was able to get some sleep. Thank you all again very much. Original post April 16, 2024. I, 41F, went in sea with my entitled narcissistic mother and her siblings 11 years ago after years of physical, emotional, and financial abuse, as well as years of parentification starting when I was 11 years old. None of her siblings said or did anything. They just looked the other way and told me I was too emotional and exaggerate everything. My brother, 30M, and his girlfriend, 22F, are having a baby shower for their first baby this Saturday. My mother is organizing it and sent out invites and created a Facebook event. This is why I went/stopped my NC so I could see the event and mark myself as going. I refused to let a POS human being prevent me from being there for brother and his girlfriend even if that person is my mother. I'm not going to lie, I spiraled when I first saw my mother's invite. All the years of abuse, days of missed elementary school because the bruises were in invisible places, all came back. My stepdad, 54M, talked me down, and we're going together. He was abused by her just as bad as I was, if not worse. My mother is organizing the baby shower because my brother is close with her. Yes, he knows what she did but thinks I should just forgive and forget, which I have multiple times, but that never stopped the abuse. My biggest concern is my boyfriend and I have a child, 1F. And when my brother found out, he started again with how I should forgive and forget. I told him I don't expect him to not tell my mother about my child, but to respect that she will not be in my child's life. Since my daughter was born, there were some not-so-subtle attempts from her to like pictures of my daughter. She even sent me a friend request once, which I deleted right away. She's the jealous, vindictive type, so it wouldn't surprise me if she pressured my brother to get his girlfriend pregnant so she'd have a grandchild too. She's jealous of my stepdad for being a granddad. For those wondering why I didn't block her, I did but unblocked every now and then because I was paranoid she'd try something with grandparents' rights even though I know she doesn't have a leg to stand on for that or try to get sympathy for not seeing my daughter. This still bothers me to this day. Sometimes the nightmares and hormones have me paralyzed in fear. All this to say, my mother would be the type of person to post about this on social media, and if she does, I want to be able to get screenshots of it and address it right away because she's a master manipulator. I decided to take a big step and started therapy for the first time last week. Therapy was always something ridiculed and seen as something for weak people by my family. My boyfriend, 44M, agreed with the therapy and even asked me how I felt afterwards. He's my rock and my everything. We've been together for 20 years. For those wondering why we aren't married, because we don't care. We love each other, and for us that's enough. Therapy helped a lot. I have another session this week, 2 days before I see her again. My therapist called me brave, which honestly surprised me. I never thought of myself as being brave. Anyway, I'll update after the baby shower. Comments. Commenter. Your brother deems his deference for your mother above the abuser he knows you suffered. However much you care for him, your feelings are secondary as far as he's concerned. Why stress? Spend the day with someone who loves you. OP. Thank you for your comment. I do agree with you that my feelings are completely secondary to him. Unfortunately, he's very much like her personality-wise, but his girlfriend is a gem and keeps him level-headed. Even he admits it's. My dad and I have an agreement that if either of us are uncomfortable, we'll leave right away. We're going as each other's support. Plus, I worked really hard on a crocheted baby blanket, hats, and... Commenter. Why are you putting yourself in this situation? OP. Thank you so much for your concern. Yes, it's going to be stressful, but after having lost my entire family when going in sea, I went a few years with no contact with anyone, including my stepdad and brothers. She had turned everyone against me, which destroyed me. I felt so abandoned. Once her lies, cheating, and abuse were exposed is when my stepdad and one of my 2 brothers came back in my life. The one brother who came back, 23M, Isn't the one whose baby shower I'm going to 30M? Yes, there's a massive age difference between. Yes, I'm 41F. I raised the two of them alone. I felt like I had lost everything when they went NC. Them coming back felt like a second chance. Brother, 30M, came back a few years after. He's very easily manipulated and has the same kind of personality as my mother. Vain, narcissistic, and selfish, but he's a watered-down version without the abuse. Basically, I'm putting myself in this situation for my second-chance little family I was able to form after the fallout. Seems ridiculous, but I'd feel terrible to not try. Commenter, I too think it is a bad idea. I cannot imagine spending time around someone that was abusive to me for years just to appease my brother who didn't even care that I was abused, still maintains a close relationship with my abuser, and on top of it has the audacity to tell me to forgive and forget. That part is throwing me. I cannot for the life of me imagine my mom hurting my sister who I love yet still wanting to be cool with my mom. My mom would be dead to me and I get as fond of her brother's GF, but like someone else suggested, take her out to lunch or do something else nice with her like a spa day and give her the gift. OP. As much as I would love to do all the above, it's really hard with how far my brother and his girlfriend live in their job. They both work really long shifts. I know it's confusing, and even I wonder sometimes, especially that he plays off my trauma like I'm exaggerating. But the best way I can put it is, in a way, we have a way to start over after the year did abuse not just to me but my stepdad also. We want to try and make our little family of chosen people work. We never got a chance to do that ever. I would have to do a post by itself about my family and all that lead to the NC. That would be a massive post in itself, so much to unpack. But therapy is helping. Lastly, I was happy to hear my brother's girlfriend put her foot down with certain things with my mother. My brother will get to see our mother's real personality with his baby. I hope he steps up for his girlfriend and their baby. Commenter. It's okay to prioritize yourself and your family. You cannot thrive and be bountiful if you don't. If not going is best for you, that is okay. What is best for you is okay. Took me a long time to say that. It's not selfish to do what's best for you and your low. OP. I've really been leveraging no as a full sentence, and I've been using that as a filter for people I want to keep in my life. If people can't respect me when I say no, then what else are they going to disrespect me on? At first, I did not want to go. I had a full-blown crying, shaking, dry, heaving meltdown. After composing myself, I called my dad and he talked me through it and said he was going. He was heavily abused too, so I know it's just as hard for him. That's why we're going as each other's support. As for my daughter, she's staying home with my boyfriend having a daddy-daughter day. Commenter. I would suggest just using her first name, not mother. Deny the relationship. Twist that knife. OP, I use mother here because I've used egg donor in the past and people were super confused. Even to my stepdad and brothers, I call her by her first name. Commenter. I'm a cross-stitcher and knitter. I feel your pain. Editor's note. OP commented at one point that she had a handmade gift for the new baby. As for the shower, have you considered that by going you are letting her win? She gets to show everyone how mean you are to her. She gets to create drama and blame it on you. Think on this. A narcissist thrives on attention. Any attention, even bad, is a bomb to their soul. She will do everything in her power to make you look bad. There is no way to win except by ignoring her existence. OP. Thank you, I have considered that side too. I'm going by my dad's experience. He had to see her a month ago or so for the gender reveal and he said she looked resigned, almost emotionless. She's already painted me in a bad light to the entire family, her sisters, her brother, and their kids who will also be there by the way, but they're also non-confrontational and fake. I know my mother is throwing the baby shower for exactly that reason. She wants attention. My dad and I agreed to leave right away if either of us feels uncomfortable. Commenter. You want to be there for a grown-ass man who doesn't care about you being abused. Why do you still care about him when has he ever cared about you? OP. Thank you for your comment. We used to be close a long ago. We've gotten a lot better in the past 2 years. He was really badly manipulated by my mother for many years. He took for granted that what she was telling him was true because she's our mother and she wouldn't lie, which is so dumb, I know. He's learning that more and more. I think he's seeing it more now that she keeps trying to ask him for money like I warned him she would. Commenter. Her brother will change his mind about mother once she starts abusing his kid. These kinds of things don't just stop. Good luck to you. OP. Thank you, I really hope it doesn't come to that, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think it'll be more my brother's girlfriend putting her foot down with my mother's involvement. She'll probably try to involve herself in everything. My brother will be forced to choose and in general does what his girlfriend says since she's the most down-to-earth, realistic, and normal out of the two. She keeps him level, his words exactly. Commenter, you don't have to go. Just because your brother has poor taste in people doesn't mean you have to be around your abuser. You can see him other times. OP. Thank you for your comment. I know I don't. I'm choosing to go. I feel like I'm letting my mother get under my skin and win by not going, and that makes me even angrier. That's where I'm at the moment. Editor's note. All edits take place on the same post. Edit. I'm sorry if I'm time confusing anyone by saying my dad when referring to my stepdad. To me, he is my dad. He and I have gone through hell and back together. In regards to my mom, our experience has brought us closer than ever. Edit 2. I am not bringing my daughter. She's staying home and having a daddy-daughter day with my boyfriend. Edit 3. April 16th or 17, 2024. Holy cow, I did not expect this many comments. Thank you all so much. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. That's what I love at Mark Narrations. I love this sub. It's such a tightly knit community. My daughter knows the sound of his voice now and comes running to see when I play his videos on my tablet, LOL. One thing I want to tell everyone, you don't need to worry about me breaking down crying or having a meltdown. I'm at a point in my life where I don't get sad. I get angry and my worry as if she tries anything my stepdad will have to jump him and pull me back, and I have no problems calling her out on her abuse. Many years ago she made him nearly homeless where he only had enough money to pay his mortgage but had to go to the food bank for food. He didn't tell me because he knew I probably would have done something I'd regret later. He only told me after the fact that I cried tears of anger and disbelief at being related to someone so vile. When I get overwhelmed, I cry, which I find so embarrassing. I am seeing a therapist this Thursday, 2 days before the shower, and I'm really looking forward to it. I will keep you all updated. Thank you all again so much. I really love this sub. Less than 3. Edit 4. April 18th, 2024. Thank you all again so much for all the love and support. I'm sorry I didn't clarify this before. I have 2 brothers, 30M and 23M. My brothers are my half-brothers. We share the same mother. Their father is my stepdad. Just like how I call my stepdad dad, I call my half-brothers brothers. All the comments, advice, and suggestions have been amazing and some really funny. I'm feeling so much better after reading all the support, and I'm started to look forward to the baby shower, especially that my stepdad texted me saying he met my mother's husband this week and that the man's face was priceless after my stepdad introduced himself to him. I asked for more details, but he said we'll talk about it on the drive over. After that, to give you all a full scope of who my mother is and what kind of a piece of human being she really is. I put it in point form instead of a giant block of text. Her physical abuse started at 6 to 7 years old. It was pinching and twisting until my skin tore, grabbing me by the arm or leg so hard she'd leave hand-shaped bruises, slapping me across the face so hard I'd have the imprint of her hand on my face, throwing objects at me. She almost broke my orbital bone when I was 8 after throwing a glass at my face after I said a swear word in public for the first time. A few times I couldn't go to school because the bruises were invisible places. Telling me she'd throw me outside and lock the door so the boogeyman would take me if I didn't do exactly what she said. This was all when I was under the age of 10. The parentification started when I was 11 when my first brother was born. He was my sole responsibility, same when my second brother was born when I was 18. The financial abuse started when I was 12 when I had my first job tutoring the neighbor's son. She'd take my money to buy alcohol. I would hide my money so I could buy food for me and brother or my cat since she'd forget and just say to eat whatever. Financially speaking, she wrecked my credit. I let her use my credit card when I was 21. Stupid, I know, to help her with her business. She said as my mother I owed it to her. Back then I was still in the mindset I was taught growing up that family was what was most important. Now I know better and I've worked hard for years to build my credit back up. She tried to get back in contact with me 8 years ago by wishing me happy birthday on Facebook under my brother's comments, their Facebook friends. This was 2 weeks after we were contacted about inheritance following my grandfather's death. A few months before, she hadn't contacted me for anything the 3 years previous. So gross, especially since she inherited way more than I or my brothers did. As for my stepdad, she cheated on him for 6 years with some guy she met down in the Caribbean, so not only is she abusive, she's also a cheating piece of. She would fly out down there 6 to 7 times a year by herself for her me time and would lose it when my stepdad asked to join her. All the money he gave her to pay the mortgage, hydro, and other utilities she'd sent to her boy toy, now her husband. My stepdad almost lost his house, and she ruined his credit too by racking up credit card and cell phone bills. Her credit was so bad she couldn't get a phone. I had had enough and confronted her. They split up not long after, and that's when all my mother's lies and manipulation came to light. They owned a company together that my mother's brother bought from them. My stepdad and mom had each taken out a loan with a bank to start the company together and were still making payments to it after they split. My stepdad paid his loan off first, and that made my mother so angry and jealous she had her brother help her take my stepdad to court to sue him and have him pay her loan. She won. He had to go to the food bank for a while because he couldn't afford anything else but the mortgage and hydro. I have therapy this afternoon and can't wait. I felt so much better last week after just one session. You all have made me feel so much stronger and confident. Let me know if you have any questions or need clarification on anything I wrote above. Update April 20th, 2024. Today was the baby shower, and I'm putting everything in point form because there's a lot to update you all on. I'm typing for my cell phone as I'm rocking my daughter to sleep. I missed her so much today. My dad invited his female best friend to come with us to the baby shower. We'll call her Sally. She's a wonderful woman with a big heart and very protective of my dad, especially since she knows my mother fairly well and works at the same place as her. The first time she and I met, we were talking about each other's work, and she was going on about this awful coworker who was so bossy, blamed everyone else for her mistakes, and took the praise for other people's work. Turns out it was my mother, lol. Basically, my mother was not happy Sally was coming. Both my dad and Sally said my mother texted them to say the baby shower started at 1:30. Didn't. The invite clearly said 1 p.m. I told them we're getting there for 1 p.m. and was 99% sure my mother was trying to make them look bad out of jealousy. I was right. We arrived at 12:55 p.m. and my mother's deer in the headlights look on her face said it all. Guys, I stayed composed. I did it. My hands were shaking, but I kept them in my pockets. Sally saw this and squeezed my arm. My mother came out of her daze and came over. "OP, you came. It's nice to see you." I smirked at her obvious lie and discomfort at being caught. Said, "Nice to see you too. Where do I put my gift?" She took my gift and put it on the table with the other gifts. My mother's 2 siblings showed up with their daughters. One sister greeted me like an acquaintance, which I appreciated. The other pretended I wasn't even there. My dad, Sally, and I sat at a table with one of my dad's former work buddies. We had a blast. My mother was not impressed, shooting us dirty looks. So much so my dad's friend turned to me and said, "Oh, I think we might need to keep it down. Everyone else was talking loudly. We weren't the only ones. She just didn't like that. We were having fun. Do me forget her. She always looks like that." My dad spit out his drink laughing. I didn't say it loud enough for her to hear, at least I don't think so, and didn't care in the moment to be honest, but we did get more dirty looks, lol. My mother whipped out a headset with a microphone hooked to a tiny speaker that she hooked to the back of her pants like she was some sort of talk show host. I not. I didn't notice until my dad said, "What the?" I looked over and couldn't help but laugh. Did I mention my mother thrives on being the center of attention even at her own son's baby shower? She had us play games and whatnot, which was fun. I participated and had fun until my mother handed diapers with melted chocolate bars on them and gave them out to my 2 brothers, my dad, and another guy at the shower. She wanted them to taste what was in the diaper and guess the chocolate bar. The way the chocolate was melted, you could tell some of the crotch of the diaper had turned gelatinous, which is what it's supposed to do when a baby pees. I doubt that gel is for human consumption. Me and my now very comfortable seat at the shower blurted, "That's disgusting." I got a few responses agreeing with that's gross. Then there was the bottle drinking game. My mother dropped the bottle full of grape juice in front of my dad like he was a bug she was trying to squish with the bottle. It was so obvious that the girl at the table next to us tapped my shoulder and asked why the woman with the microphone just pitched the bottle to the poor guy in the blue shirt. I told her the guy was my dad and the woman was his ex, my mother. The girl apologized profusely. I told her not to, that she said nothing wrong and that my mother was just like that. My dad and I went out for supper afterwards, and what I found out over, guys, OMG. Turns out my mother was upset with my dad because she asked my other brother, not the one having the baby shower, to try and put in a good word for her to my dad because she wanted to get back together with him, and he just laughed. He didn't know what else to say. Need I remind you all that she's currently married to the man she cheated on my dad with for 6 years. She married and sponsored this man from the Caribbean to come to Canada. According to my brother, this poor man is treated like a tenant and is forced to live in her basement. WTF. My dad laughed when he saw my face and told me not to worry, that there's no way in hell he would ever consider getting back with her. I told him good, because I'd have to smack some sense into him if he did. He's 99% positive she's trying to get back with my dad to try and reconcile with me to have access to my daughter. He said he'd rather die than let that happen. So there you have it, what a show. But it was a fun show that I did not expect in the least. Thank you all again for all your comments and support, it was so very appreciated. Commenter, you handled that well. Now just go back to pretending she doesn't exist. She doesn't deserve anything different. The best revenge is living well. OP. That's exactly the plan. Thank you again for your comments. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Took a DNA test and discovered my grandfather is actually my biological father. My mom has been hiding this insane secret for over 30 years. This weekend I found out my mom is not a normal mother and is a narcissist or maybe a full-blown sociopath. For you to understand the full ramifications of what she has told me, I will go into my backstory. My mom, me, and grandparents all lived together until I was 6. My granddad is my mom's stepdad. However, he was always family to me, and I never considered him as a step-grandparent. When my mom was 30, she had me. My dad was never in the picture. I was told he was a married man who my mom was seeing. One day he turned around and said he didn't want to see her anymore and wanted to try and make the relationship with his wife work for the sake of his kids. He vanished and mom never saw him again, and soon after mom found out she was pregnant. She decided that she wouldn't tell her parents the guy's name and wouldn't tell him unless he called her, as it wasn't her place to destroy a family, and refused to put a name on the birth certificate. My grandparents helped her through the pregnancy. When I was 5, my mom met Chris, my stepdad, and we moved into a separate house. Chris has his quirks, he was nice but didn't want to be a dad yet. My mom changed all her parenting ideals to match his strictness. An odd choice to do for someone who doesn't want kids. Okay, on to the issue at hand. With the birth of my son, I started to wonder who my dad is, more so I could be aware of any possible medical conditions than having a relationship with him. I asked my mom last year and got the same answer as usual: married man, no pictures or number. This time I started looking into him. No record of his name in the school. Mom said she met him. The age didn't line up with how long people are at school for, so she got me an ancestry kit. Imagine my surprise when a member of my grandfather's family popped up on there. So last weekend I confronted my mom, who needed a few days to remember. And this weekend I got the results of this, and my grandfather is my father. The story my mom gave was so crazy I can't accept it, but we'll type it here. She was deeply depressed as she didn't have children, was abused by her granddad. Her actual dad abandoned her, and all relationships were not healthy. Her type was married men, so her stepdad, my granddad SL dad, was the first nice person in her life, and they became so close friends that people would joke they were having an affair, but it was never like that. One drunken night out, she opened up to my granddad about why she was depressed. She wanted a baby and asked him to help her with this and gave him a pot. He left a deposit, went downstairs, and immediately realized this was insane, so asked her to destroy the sample. She said she would but didn't, and used it anyway, claiming they never had sex ever. Then a week later, the married man she was seeing, the same one we can find no record of, had a condom split, so she presumed it was him, and my granddad SL dad never suspected a thing. Now the DNA lines up that my granddad is my dad, but I don't know what to do with the information or where my head is at, and I would really appreciate any advice on what you think my next step should be. A few of my scattered thoughts. 1. My mom must be an utter sociopath. Not only does she do that with her stepdad in her early years, she actively convinced my grandparents to move in with her while raising his child and lying if not having an affair. And if the story is true, she must have had a suspicion I could have been his and just lied. 2. How could a person with feelings and emotions do that to their own mother, followed by letting this lady look after her/her affair child while she goes through cancer? My mom goes over monthly to check on her. If anyone can lie to her entire family like this and rub their faces in it like this, I can't see her as someone with feelings, and I don't trust her at all. Even her husband doesn't know about this. Heck, while she met up with me to tell me this, she told her husband she was going to see my son. Her lies never end. 3. While I never realized how crazy my mom is, I knew she was a little nutty. My granddad, however, is a different matter. He has always been there, my rock. When I was younger and dealing with thinking my mom would die before I hit 16, he is always so loving to his wife that the person I thought he was just wouldn't do this. But mom's story is so disgusting and crazy. Why would she lie? But as he is so sensible, why wasn't the advice go to a sperm donor or bar crawl, dress up, buy a guy a few drinks, and don't use protection? Finally, what do I do with this information? I can't face my family knowing the whole close-knit dynamic is built on a lie. I'm tempted to tell everyone, but my grandma is a saint, and I can't imagine telling 83-year-old your husband and daughter have stabbed you in the back even though you spent your entire life looking after the woman your husband was cheating on you with and their affair baby. I think at this stage of her life it may kill her. She has had such a hard life and just doesn't deserve to look back and see that every second of her kindness was wasted. If I could tell the world while protecting her, I would, but I don't think it's right my mom gets to walk away from this scot-free. And I think it's only right that my granddad should be told if he doesn't already know. Mom says he doesn't, but how can I believe all of this? If I tell him without mom talking to him, then I have the best chance of the real story. However, I rarely see him without my grandma, and I can pretty much work the real story out, and I can't help but feel this isn't my mess to clean up. My mom should tell him, and if she says I told him this story, I will know it's an outright lie. So my head is a mess and my soul is too involved in wanting to protect me, so I could really use some impartial advice on what you guys think I should do. I want what's best for me, my kid, and my grandma. Update 1, March 30th, 23. Okay. It's been a few days and the shock has settled somewhat. I read everyone's replies and tried to answer them all, but it has been a busy few days. Original post is here for those who didn't see it. The 3 consistent pieces of advice were to get therapy, that my anger seems to be totally directed at my mom and none towards my dad's granddad, and to maybe consider that my granddad has groomed her from a young age. I want to assure everyone that all your comments were listened to. I will correct that it wasn't that I wasn't angry at him, but the shock of that bit hit harder. My mom and I always had a turbulent relationship. He, however, was my rock for my entire life, and this was so out of left field and unlike the man I knew that it took me a little longer to realize that this could very well be a form of grooming. I moved the situation forward by texting my mom my feelings. Too short and a very long text. It boiled down to 2 main points. Middle 1. I don't believe your story. You need to tell me what happened. Was this an affair? Was it something more sinister? Do. Middle 2. You need to tell my granddad SL. Dad, this. My mom answer was very short. She didn't mention my feeling or ask how I was once, but told me she wouldn't speak to me about this. Again, that she was not groomed and this was her idea. She isn't sorry and it's my fault. I'm heard as my investigation has forced her to tell the story. Middle. She will tell my granddad the next day. My granddad called me immediately. He sounded as I felt shocked, confused, etc. My mom just said, I'm not as shocked as I thought I would be. He told me his version with 2 key differences, that it wasn't a deposit on the side, but mom had pre-bought a kit that allowed artificial insemination, which is just as likely a chance of working as sex itself. He was convinced by her it was a good idea. He can't remember every argument as it was 33 years ago, but the 2 that sticks out are you were the person I am closest to and I trust you, and if I needed a kidney you would give me that without hesitation. This conversation along with a few beers meant he went along with it. However, after he did it, he realized what utter mistake this was and told my mom, this is a mistake, let's not do this, be it, and let's not talk of it again, as nothing happened. Mom agreed, said she would bin his sample, and he left for home thinking he avoided the biggest mistake of his life. Mom, of course, did not destroy it, as she said, and used it in the eyes of my country's law. This is sexual assault. In my last post, I mentioned my mom was molested by her granddad and abandoned quite publicly by her birth father. Something I didn't mention against my granddad is he also had a rough childhood. His mother died when young and his stepmom was abusive. This has led him to forgive any mistakes his family makes and means family comes first without exception into a fault because he views my mom as his daughter. He feels the villain of the piece as the understanding of mental health wasn't there. I didn't realize how deep her depression was and I regret not telling her to see a therapist and that he failed her massively for not doing so. He is also thinking of telling his wife immediately but thinks I should have a say in that choice. He empathized with how I was feeling too, something my mom did not. I want to believe him, however, as I said earlier in this post, it's this relationship that will impact me more in losing. So spoke to my partner for outsider opinion, as she of course knows these people traits and flaws. She agrees that this sounds plausible in an insane situation. My granddad is flaw in putting family first, my mom's manipulative and lying nature. While her story not lining up completely, there could always be the chance they had an affair or drunk in one night that neither will admit to, but nothing has ever made my partner or me feel there was any kind of spark or awkwardness between them to suggest this. My mom also always spins stories to make her look like a saint. The easy option would be to say this was grooming or assault as an easy out. Why make up this completely unbelievable lie as another option? A few people may wonder if my mom is that good at manipulation. There are many small instances, but let me just say the biggest. She once convinced my grandma and granddad to buy a house with her that none of them could afford on their own, outside of their hometown. A couple of years later she moved. When I was younger, my grandma said, you know how convincing your mom can be, and it's only by piecing this together when I was older, when she has tried to convince me with some very skewed point of view or outright lies, that made me realize that how she communicates isn't normal but manipulation. So next steps, my granddad wants all three of us to meet up either weekend and discuss if we tell the Water family. He is willing to tell his wife if that's what everyone wants, even knowing it will destroy his marriage. My mom hasn't contacted me since, so I don't know if she will even come. If she does come to this meeting, I will be using this as an opportunity to confirm if my mom did withdraw consent when we are all there. If she does admit this, then I am inclined to believe this crazy story is true, and they were both monumentally stupid and my mom has stabbed him in the back. The shock from my granddad is real, but also our relationship was real, and we were both in the dark, meaning I can see a way of forging our relationship ahead. My mom, however, I do not trust, and if she admits to this, will also be admitting to sexual assault. I don't imagine her admitting this usually, but she has admitted thus far only with no other options due to an ancestry test. With that relationship, I don't know, I don't trust her, but then she is clearly old lady with cancer with very deep-seated mental problems. The old relationship will always be dead, but should I set new boundaries and try and form a new relationship with this woman, or just cut contact due to lack of trust? This I don't know yet. I'll also be setting my boundaries are as far as the wider family goes. My granddad has stated I should get a say in whether my grandma is told. This is something I don't know the morally right thing to do. She is 83 years old, and this will destroy her. And will she even believe this crazy story? Probably not, as she was also abused by her father. So much abuse in my family has been uncovered with this. It's so sad. But then if my granddad was sexually abused, is this fair to destroy his marriage? On the flip side, is it right to lie about something this big? This is a decision I can't make for my own mental health, and ultimately it is not my mistake to clean up after, so I will be using this meeting to tell them they need to choose between them what the next steps are. My mom has effortlessly kept this life from everyone in her life, so that will clearly be her choice, but my granddad, will he be able to lie to his wife with this? I don't know. I will tell them that they need to choose, and I will go along with that decision, but if they change their mind, they need to tell me so I can prepare for any fallout. Our meeting will be in a week or two, so I will leave a final update then. For now, I wanted to thank everyone who reached out and gave advice. I will be getting to a therapist soon, so I can make a better informed decision and can make a clearer choice for what's better for me. So in child, someone said I should marry my M, as she is needed to put up with the brunt of my mom's insanity for 4+ years. To those I will say you are right, she is absolutely amazing, and we have been engaged for a while, but a pregnancy which led to buying a house, and our first baby has put the delayed an actual wedding, but she truly is the best and been a rock throughout all of this. Update 2, May 4th, 2023. It's been a few weeks and a lot has happened, so as I got such good advice from you guys, I thought I would tell you what happened up until now, and then I won't update any further. Before I continue, I feel I should clarify a comment in my older post. The title said my mom went from normal to narcissist in an hour. She has always been a narcissist. Often narcissists have a golden child and a scapegoat. I was the golden child with no siblings to be a scapegoat. Enter my fiancé, and a scapegoat was found in the last 8 years. Her nature has become more and more obvious to me the meaner she treated my fiancé, and me, being blind to it, failed to defend my partner when I should have. Genuinely believing it was my mom's poor communication skills, which I've been aware of for many years. Anyway, on with the update. My mom, granddad, and I sat down on Good Friday. My mom collaborated my granddad's story, and she had stolen his sperm. I took on board what people said about her being abused for years, and so I decided to steer away from the acted. It will always be in my mind that they maybe had an affair, which would mean She was groomed as the truth they have presented is so bizarre, but it was over 30 years ago, and without it I wouldn't be here, and it's what they both are saying is true, so I turned the conversation into how we move forward. Originally I wasn't going to comment on if we should tell anyone or not as it's their mess, but I know that my mom would argue for keeping it quiet, which she did, and not having an opinion when I know the outcome felt the same as having an opinion on it. So when they asked what I wanted to do, the deciding factor came down to a friend's advice. She gave me, well, telling your grandma help you in any way, and no, it wouldn't, so I agreed to keep it quiet. My mom then accidentally told me she had lied to my stepdad and told him I was preventing her from seeing my kid, which I thought was really not okay. I am angry with her for a justifiable reason, and I'm trying to get our relationship to be somewhat salvaged despite having no trust for her, and she's blaming me for this, so told her she needs to tell her husband the real reason I haven't been as close. After this conversation I had 3 days off work and wanted a bit of time and space to put it behind me, book some therapy, and spend time with my so and kid, which never happened. That night somebody tried to reverse a car through my neighbor's house in revenge of what the police told us was a petty squabble, and the neighbors got a rifle. Guns are super rare in the UK, and shot at them. Of course the police were called by numerous people on the street, and thank the gods my child slept through it. By my so and I were nervous wrecks for a long time after, so goodbye relaxing weekend and thanks for ruining Easter. After making sure my family was safe, I picked this family drama back up, and I met my mom and stepdad last weekend. This was to set clear boundaries in the relationship going forward. My trust in her is broken, and honestly I don't think she has a long enough life left to rebuild it completely due to cancer, but my relationship is separate from her and my son's relationship, who loves his Nana and has been kept separate from all of this. I feel very distant from my close-knit family these days, but I guess that's what happens when they lie to you your whole life. My mom has given me an attempt at an apology, however weak. I have told her my feelings which haven't been understood, and I have set new boundaries which will probably be ignored, so I will keep my so's mother's advice to heart. If you can offer a relationship to just one person knowing you will get nothing back, you will have led a good life. Then finally, as of today, my so and I can announce she has been pregnant throughout all this ST storm, and due to the extra stresses we have been super nervous that the baby was okay, but in the first scan baby was moving around with a strong healthy heartbeat. Thank you again everyone for the help and advice you gave me. Update 3, June 22nd, 2023. The full details are in my post history, so I'll try and be brief here. My mom lied about my dad's identity my whole life, and I recently found out she sexually assaulted her stepfather, who I have always seen as my granddad, is actually my father. She lied to me my whole life and has put me in the awful situation of not being able to tell anyone, as it will kill my grandma, who is a saint and has spent her whole looking after and caring for my mom and granddad, and at 886 does not deserve this news and rip my family apart. I know I need therapy, I just have a toddler pregnant, so no time or money. All of this I could forgive, it's up, but I guess without it I wouldn't be here, neither would my kid. What has really hurt me through this is the lying to others as to why I have been a little different. She told her husband I was blocking her from seeing her grandkid or blaming me for being upset. Her lack of empathy or understanding everything she has said is just showing me she does not understand why I am upset. My so has been a goddamn rock, and although she isn't a huge fan of my mother, has tried to remain impartial and polite, as I have anyway, with a brief overview of a very messed up problem. On to my question. Despite this, last year my mom and me were quite close, not the best at communicating, but we used to chat every few days. My mom has had cancer since I was 15. She was given a year, and I am now 31. It's come back, and I don't think she is long. She is now using a wheelchair. I want her to have as much time with her grandkid before she goes, and both me and my partner want to be able to bury the hatchet so when she passes as we can say we tried our best and we won't feel any regrets when our shock of everything passes. That's our plan, but when either of us see her or speak to her, we just feel angry at the past wrongs, the new ones, the shock, everything. And every friend we ask who knows the full story just says they would refuse to see her or be unable to forgive her. And I get it, but I could really use some advice on how to forgive so future me doesn't feel guilty when she is dead in a few months. Anyone got any help? New update. January 25th. 2024. After getting no advice on the last post, I figured there would never be an update to share. Throughout most of the shock was the predominant feeling. Then about 3 weeks ago, all the emotions hit me like a ton of bricks, and I really started to struggle. In November, my partner gave birth to a beautiful baby. She is tired getting up to feed him, and I didn't have the capacity to ignore her tired shortness and not take it personally. The UK health system is slow and counseling only. Started 3 weeks ago, so did not know how to heal or find forgiveness to anyone despite my mom being very sick. But last Thursday something big changed in writing my thoughts down, but after not really knowing the rules of updating on each sub, I thought I would compile the post together and put the update here. Last week, after seeing how much I was struggling, my so reached out to my mom to tell her how much it was affecting. My mom's reaction was sorry. He is hurting, I wish he would talk to me, but Don't want to hurt everyone by telling the truth, to which my soul replied, as a mother, I'm sure you don't want to leave this world hurting your son in not telling everyone you are leaving him the scapegoat, and she needs to find a solution. To my surprise, this worked, and she sat down and told my Nana and her sister her version of the truth. My opinion, as soon as I heard my Nana knew the truth, I wrung her and sobbed. However, the truth has lifted a huge mental load for me, and for the first time in nearly a year I can think without a huge cloud over everything. I think this secret was leaving me more and more depressed, and while I was outwardly fine, it was taking an even bigger toll that I realized in shock had saved me in all the last 3 weeks. Now the truth is out and I can function. My biggest issue was I felt like a SLE ball lying, but didn't know if it was the right thing to do. I can revoke my silence but couldn't take back the truth, so chose an action until I knew what to do, but I'm not sure I ever would have figured that out. The other thoughts were, if I waited for my mom to pass away, is it fair sharing this with her sister, who then has to sit with that knowledge without the opportunity to ask any questions for herself? I know I spoke in circles with friends, my partner, and did the best I could, so I won't beat myself up too much, but I felt a physically weight lift from my shoulders when I knew the lie was out. I still don't believe their story. However, my mom keeps mentioning she thought my real dad was Robert from school, even though I know he doesn't exist, but at the least this doesn't affect my identity. My Nana's opinion, my Nana remains a saint. She believed them totally, as she knows how dedicated her husband is to helping his children and knows how bad my mom's mental health was. She loved her family and is happy for me that I found out my dad, and knows he loves me. She is disappointed with her husband for not telling her when he found out a year ago, but is happy that it resulted in me, as she couldn't love me more. She is sad I needed to deal with this while raising a baby and didn't think it was fair on them to put me through it. I names my baby after her, as she's amazing. My aunt's opinion, my aunt reached out to wish me well, and no, nothing is affected in our relationship by my parents. She found out yesterday. A little later, she has lost a lot of respect for her sister and stepdad, but no, she loves her family even if she is disappointed, and her trust is shaken. She has criticized that they made me stay silent as it will kill my Nana, and thinks that was cowardly and wrong of them, but no. She needs her family, and my mom and her poor health needs her. She has told her children and told them it is up to them if they believe the story or not. So that's the end of it. I have bought a few self-help books, got a therapist who is helping, and just trying to rebuild after a year of hell. My mom probably only had a few months left, but then she had until I was 17 and I'm 32 now, so we shall see. But with the truth, I can at least start forging a small relationship based in truth. However, I doubt it will ever be as strong as it was, just because she doesn't have time to rebuild it. To that, ultimately what my aunt said really rang true to me. It's a shame, because even if the story is true, nobody will ever believe it, and they will live with that stain on them forever. Edit for clarity. A few comments saying the cancer is fake. Totally understand why. However, she lost 5 and her back collapsed and recently needed a catheter. Putting in this part isn't faked. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Bride forces bridesmaids to fund a lavish $2 night bachelor party, then disappears mid-trip for secret. Tata's job paid with our money. I missed the days when bridesmaids were treated like people and not like stage props. My future Sil is getting married, so of course I'm a default bridesmaid. She didn't give us options for the dress. She picked it out and told us it's the one we'll be wearing. The dress is a strapless, backless, thigh-slit halter neck. I am a larger girl, triple D chest, should explain why I don't wear backless or halter styles. Backless means I can't wear any form of support bra, and there is virtually no shape where I can put underneath it. The only bras that work are stickies or tape, which do not hold me up in the least. I tried the dress on. My chest is spilling out the sides. Back rolls are on full blast, and I am popping out of this thing every which way. I'm so uncomfortable. I basically told the bride, sorry, I know it's your big day, but there is no way I'm wearing this dress. My body shape is different from the rest of the bridal party, and I can't justify wearing it. I told her I'd be fine if I can simply modify it to be more conservative at the back and chest. She declined and told me to just be more confident in myself, because all the dresses must be identical for photos. I have no body confidence issues. There are plenty of styles that suit my figure. It just so happens that this dress was not made for larger women and does not look appropriate on my body. I want to drop out of the wedding, but my family insists I stay in because it's my Sil and it would ruin the wedding and the relationship. I don't get why I should have to be paraded around in front of my entire family, extended family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, etc. in an outfit that makes me uncomfortable. It's just getting ridiculous. Brides, please have enough tact to make sure your girls are comfortable on your special day. We're humans, not props. Update 1. First of all, thank you so much for all the support. I appreciate your helpful advice and suggestions. On that note, I've decided to stay in the wedding to avoid sending my mother to an early grave. However, I've also decided I'll be wearing the out of this dress and making sure the center of attention is not on the lovely bride. I tried to resolve the issue with tact in class and was shot down, so I feel I've earned the right to be petty. I'm going to order some really specific shapewear which can be concealed under what little material this dress has. Kudos to you all who sent me suggestions. I'll be going full side boob, full shimmer added on the exposed back, and full body oil on the legs for the thigh slit. I'll be doing an updo on the hair, so there is nothing getting in the way of this dress. I'll be wearing a shawl for everything else, but trust that for the ceremony I'll be looking like Sahai in Dusk Till Dawn. Let's see what she thinks about this body confidence she asked me to find, girl please. If anyone is curious, I'll most likely come back and made a post my pics bride made a profit on Bachelorette Trip S drama. So much tea I'm glad I can spill to my Reddit community because I can't gossip about it to my family. So about 6 months ago, the bride planned her destination bachelorette trip and charged each of the 11 girls $650 for the Airbnb. I was salty about the high cost, but it's my sil, so I sucked it up and paid her. I also was suspicious about the high EF price, so I did cross-check the Airbnb listing and it checked out. Yes, this bee wanted $12,300 slight beachfront house. Well, today I'm chatting about wedding stuff with my brother who is marrying future Sil, and he said something along the lines of what a relief her dad paid for the Airbnb because that would have been so expensive for your group. I about choked. I said, hey, are you sure about that? Because all 11 girls paid $650 for the house alone, maybe run it by her. His face turned purple, so I take it he had no idea. To add to the greed going on here, when I got married I flew her out, paid for her accommodations, paid hair and makeup, paid for her bridesmaid dress, and paid transportation because she was going through a hard time. Now she has the balls to steal from me. I get that weddings are expensive, but don't have one if it requires stealing from your BMS. I'm assuming I'm the only BM who is aware of what's going on here. Not sure if I should spill to the group or just let it go. There's a chance her dad stepped in and paid for it after the fact and she just chose not to refund us. I'm not clear on the exact situation and want to avoid embarrassing my brother. Update 2. Thanks for all the advice and support. Yes, I agree with most of you who are saying I'm morally obligated to spill the beans because $650 is not child's play. This is what I'm going to do first. I'm going to talk to my brother and give him a chance to clear it up with Sil before I make a scene. I want to understand what's really going on. For example, did daddy pay for the trip, but Sil decided to put that towards a different wedding expense, things like that. That answer will determine when I tell the rest of the BMS. I'm going to give my brother only 1 to 2 days because this trip is literally next week. Stay tuned for update number 3. Update 3. Alright, so I regrouped with my brother. My mom also stepped in, bypassed my brother, and got some more info directly from her dad. Here's the tea. Future Sil dad did not offer to cover the cost until a few months after we all paid for the trip. This was after he found out the cost and was pissed that she chose a $2,300 night house and asked us to pay. Apparently he threatened not to pay for the wedding if she added more expenses onto the wedding party. Turns out she originally wanted it at the Maldives and he forbid her. According to my mom, who chatted with him directly, he felt embarrassed when he heard about the Airbnb price and wanted to save face with my side of the family, so he gave us about $7,000 to cover the cost of the house. She was supposed to refund us, but obviously that never happened. This is where it gets good, so my mom went total FBI and learned that in addition to not paying us, didn't put the money towards a different wedding expense either. She doesn't have it, so where did it go? What did she spend it on? There is currently a full-blown investigation going down between our two families. R and I have been asked by my mom not to alert the BMS just yet until we get the last bits of info and come to a resolution with both S and her dad, but we will tell them ASAP one way or another. I will come back tomorrow with another update. Wow, crazy. Update 4. The plot thickens. So as this drama is all unfolding, the maid of honor, who doesn't know what's going on yet, is continuing her duties. We all get a 4-paragraph text from her outlining the dress code for each night of the bachelorette for the bride's orders. Keep in mind the bride is asking us all to go out and buy new outfits for each night of the trip, and the themes are wild. Animal print Thursday, faux fur Friday, sparkle dress Saturday, and Barbie brunch Sunday. As if we're all gonna go out and buy that 1 week before the trip or at all. Thankfully the BM seem to be waking up to the BS. Several of them wrote back saying they won't be able to pull together those outfits in time, and one flat out said it's just not going to happen. But that's just a side story to the absolute show that is unfolding. My mom is very involved now as she's paid a decent chunk of this wedding as well, and is not like that the bride is throwing around thousands of dollars from her dad as well as lying to the bridal party. She set up a meeting directly with Sil to cut the BS and explain what's going on. She told Sil she's going to inform the BMS herself unless she gets a valid answer. At this point, I'm just shoveling down on popcorn waiting for the events to unfold. I will be back tonight with hopefully the final update. Update 5. A swan eye sculpture. She used the $7,000 to book a swan's-shaped EY sculpture to be displayed at the reception and didn't tell anyone. Turns out her dad banned her from adding any more extras to the wedding design because it was already so expensive and unnecessary. When he Venmo'd her for the Airbnb, she thought she was being sneaky and kept it instead. She didn't even tell my brother this. He only found out that her dad decided to cover the Airbnb because those two went out for cigars one night and it came up. So that mystery is solved thanks to my mini FBI crew, but now the real questions remain: where TF is my $650 and how to break the news to the BMS. Out of the kindness of her soul, my mom is giving Sil 24 hours to confess to the bridesmaids and figure out how to pay us back our money, because you know what, I did not spend $650 on some damn ice. I have kids to feed. I have bills to pay. It is taking everything in me not to text the BM group right now, but my mom is trying to give Sil one opportunity to do the right thing. This has been a roller coaster. Don't know if anyone here is still interested, but let me know if I should post the final outcome with the BMS in one last update. Lord have mercy. Update 6. Okay, as promised, here is the latest tea served boiling hot. This is a long update and I'm gonna try and get everything in. First, let's start with the bride's explanation to her family: myself, my mom, my brother, her fiancé, and her dad. She broke down crying, saying that wedding planning has been getting to her head, and she has been crushed under the pressure to have the perfect wedding, which she felt couldn't go on without this alleged swan. I didn't buy her sob story. After this whole incident, I think she is a delusional, controlling, attention-starving bridezilla who is using the wedding as a way to compete with other girls on Instagram. By the way, her job as influencer, if I didn't mention that yet. My brother took the bait, to be honest. I don't even blame him. This is his future wife, and he said he wants to help her with her mental health and get her back to a good place. He is disturbed by the situation but will continue to support her. The wedding is on, for those who were curious. Next, let's get into the matter of the missing $7,000 and whether we're getting our money back. The sad, gut-wrenching answer: probably not. Her dad said he has already paid the Airbnb cost once and he will not do it again. He said his daughter is 31 and needs to get herself out of her own mess and figure out how to make it right. She chimed in that the $7,000 is gone and asked how she would possibly pay us back. My brother refused to pay for her screw-up, while I love that everyone is finally forcing this bee to be an adult. I would like my money back more. Unfortunately, we're not going to get it unless she magically wins the lottery or gets a real job. For those that ask, there is nothing we can do legally. We all willingly paid a fixed amount, and we would have to move mountains and spend more dollar to sue. Plus, while she was incredibly shady and a terrible friend, she technically didn't do anything wrong that we could prove. Now on to the bridesmaids. After some threats from my mom, Sil finally broke down and contacted the BMS in our group chat. She sent a text that made my skin crawl. Hey ladies, you're my bride squad. So I feel compelled to share that my dad recently offered to pay for our beach accommodations. However, being that the wedding is so expensive, I have decided to put his donation towards a wedding expense. I hope you all understand, and I can't wait to party with you all next week. Oh hell no, I immediately replied back, making sure everyone knew the expense was a nice sculpture, a nice swan. Come on, people. Many of them replied and expressed how they would have loved to use that $650 for something more important, but ultimately no one has backed out. One of the girls started a side chat without the bride and asked if there is any chance of getting our dollar back if we force Sil to cancel the reservation. Unfortunately, since we're only a week out, we aren't eligible for a refund. They decided to go through with the bow, or else it would be a literal waste of $650. As for myself, I'm in the same boat. I would rather run myself over than go on this trip, but $650 is not a small amount and I can't fathom just throwing it down the drain. I haven't made my final decision yet. If I do go, it will solely be to avoid eating the $650 plus my airfare. I will not be doing any of the planned events or outfits or contributing even $1 more. I would have my own mini vacation as best I can. I'm really upset that it seems like this crazy person is going to get her way after all. Update 7. There are so many curious comments coming in, so I want to keep you in the loop. More drama has unfolded among the bridesmaids. The side text without the bride popped off and we have all agreed to do the following. We will be going on the trip, but it is no longer a bachelorette trip. We will all be taking personal vacations with our hubby's significant others while staying at the property. We were forced into this beachfront mansion plus airfare, so we're going to make the most of it. We have all backed out of hosting and paying for the bridal shower. The bride will need to find another way to move forward if she wants to have it. We will attend as guests if she has it, and we will not be gifting anything. Mother of the bride is absolutely furious. More on this later. We're letting the bride know she needs to cancel the iSwan trademark and give us our money back. After some more research, we doubt all of the $7,000 went towards the alleged swan because it doesn't seem like and they cost that much. I won't be back for a while because I want to save my next update for after the trip. Stay tuned. Update 8. The absolute tea I have today. It took me so long to write this because I am at a complete and utter loss for words where to begin. Let me start with this. There is no iSwan. There never was an iSwan. It was all an elaborate fabrication designed to distract everyone from where the missing $7,000 actually went. Rip iSwan. Turns out there was a reason behind S's luxury bachelorette location. Here's what happened. All the bridesmaids show up to the beachfront mansion with our significant others. Syl had already been made aware that it was no longer a bachelorette, but to our complete shock, she was still stunned that we actually meant it. She arrived last in her pre-booked limo, absolutely fuming that no one else showed up to the limo meeting spot at the airport. She was the only one still sticking to the original itinerary. Then she was flabbergasted that the husband also were with us. It was a comedy show at best. Anyway, we went about our individual mini vacations, and eventually someone realized it had been about 48 hours since anyone had seen Syl. I assumed she was mad and either flew home or went to stay somewhere else. Then the unthinkable unfolds. S rolls up the driveway in a wheelchair being pushed by 2 female nurses. The entire group jumped into action thinking something horrible happened. Everyone ran over to see what was going on, but the nurses ushered us away and will Syl into her room. At this point, I'm actually very concerned. We're all banging on her door asking if she's okay. The nurses eventually leave and say they legally can't reveal the nature of her health issue but assure us she's fine. I call my brother and mom but get no answer, so I finally decide to call her mom, aka the mother of the bride, who is furious that we took over the bachelorette party. Mob reveals what actually took place. She isn't sick, she didn't have a health issue, there was no accident, she got her boobs done. Yes folks, you read that correctly. She had planned as part of the original itinerary to disappear for an afternoon and return with a set of new melons. I'm sorry, what? The location of the beachfront mansion is conveniently 5 minutes away from a very famous cosmetic surgeon's office. The reason she needed this giant-ass property was not really to host 11 girls, it was to host 11 girls, plus the surgery recovery nurses and personal chef she had reserved for after the operation. There is so much more that we need to unpack. I honestly don't know where to begin. What was her mother's knowledge, SL involvement in all this? What was the cost of the procedure? Guessing around $7,000. And why was it meant to be part of the boach? What was the purpose of the iSwan lie? WTF? Will the bridesmaids, myself included, pursue legal action? Where does this leave my brother? Is this lady okay mentally? Was this a horribly misplaced cry for attention? Was it a nephew to the bridesmaid somehow? So many questions remain. I am only a few hours back from this trip, so this is all the information I have right now. I was intending for this to be my final update, and I just want to say thank you all for your support, advice, bags of popcorn, and funny input. This has been a wild ride, and I'm glad I could share it with you. So far, we have had this crazy ordeal picked up by a news publication, multiple podcasts, and a magazine. I literally want to write a book about this experience. I've already revealed a great deal of info, and so to protect my brother's privacy moving forward, I think I need to step away from the updates. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Let my wife and childhood best friend crash at our place. While he was down, I later caught them having an affair. I, 30 male, got married to my wife, 32 female, when we were in our mid-20s. The two of us had been in similar circles, so it wasn't like the two of us didn't know about each other. It wasn't until we were out in a group setting that we got to talking. My best friend Greg was throwing a birthday party. I was one of the attendees, as was Laura, my future wife. After I was greeted by Greg, I wandered over to the snack table and grabbed a few snacks. It was there I bumped into Laura, who also had the same idea. Again, the two of us had talked before, but we never had a chance to have more than a surface-level conversation. That night at the party we talked for a long time. I think we exclusively just spoke with one another. Sure, the two of us spoke with Greg, but once we started talking it was like we couldn't stop. I ended up grabbing a cup of coffee with her that night. We stayed at the cafe for a while until realizing that it was pretty late. From there, the two of us began dating. It was slow going at first because we were both heavily involved in our careers as people in their 20s were. I was working as a chef while Laura was working in the legal sector. The two of us dated for about a year before we had a mutual conversation about what our future would look like. After a long talk, we decided that we were going to get married in about 6 months. We had a very small wedding with just family and friends. Greg was my best man because I couldn't imagine having anyone else as my best man. Greg and I had been friends since childhood. Despite all our differences, the two of us were best friends. He tended to live a rather chaotic life, so I felt like I managed to ground him. Once Laura and I were married, we got an apartment and started building a life together. The first year we were definitely in newly wedded bliss. During the second year we started to get out of that and shift into a more general marriage mindset. Things weren't perfect, but they were good. If we had issues, then the two of us worked them out. After our second anniversary, Greg ended up in a bad spot. He and his girlfriend at the time broke up, leaving him without a place to stay. Being the good friend I was, I asked Laura if Greg could stay with us. She agreed. We had an extra room that Greg could stay in while he saved up money to get a studio apartment. It shouldn't take long because he had a decent paying job in the financial sector. Never did I think that Greg moving in was a bad idea. He needed a place to stay, and I would be damned if I wasn't going to let him stay. However, what was supposed to be temporary ended up turning into a couple of months. I didn't want to say anything because it was clear Greg needed to still get his head on straight. Laura also didn't seem to mind him being here. The two of them were getting along quite well. At some point, I began to think it was a little too friendly. One time, I even found them cuddling on the couch. They tried to pass it off like one of them just fell asleep on the other. I pretended to believe them, but I didn't buy it. I was a lot of things, but a fool wasn't one of them, so I decided to buy a nanny can and then put that up in the living room when they knew I wasn't going to be at home. The first chance I got, I checked the footage and was floored by what I saw. Laura and Greg were engaging in a romantic relationship right under my nose in my own house. I couldn't believe either one of them would do it to me. Not only was Laura my wife, but Greg was someone I had known since childhood. How could both of them hurt me like that? The next day, I confronted the two of them. Just when they tried to deny it, I told them I had video footage of them kissing on the couch. The next thing they were saying was that it just happened and they weren't trying to hurt anyone, especially me. I asked if they loved each other. Ironically, their lack of an answer is what gave me the answer I needed. They had some type of feelings for each other, and if that was how it was, then so be it. Who was I to stand in the way of true love? After learning the truth, I said screw it and moved out to my parents. Then I went onto social media and blasted them over social media. The fallout started right away. My in-laws turned against Laura, and even Greg's family shamed him. Our mutual friends took sides, and most of them chose mine, which proved that they were better friends than Greg could ever be to me. Naturally, my own family took my side, so I had their support from the start. The next few months were a whirlwind. I had to look at getting a new place of my own, going through with the divorce, and just moving on. Greg and Laura stayed in the apartment for a while, but Greg was failing to pay his half of the rent. Eventually, it led to the two of them being evicted. Since the two of them had been shunned by family and friends, basically it was difficult for them to find any support. The two of them ended up getting evicted, and from there they scrambled to find a place to live. It shouldn't be surprising that the two of them ended up breaking up sometime after this. I didn't care because neither of them were very important people in my life anymore. One of the worst things about this was losing not only my wife but also my best friend. It seemed fitting that the two were also losing others in their life because of their actions. There wasn't one part of me that regretted blasting the truth of what they did all over Facebook. Let them feel a little of what I felt. I had never been a person who was big on revenge, but when it came down to it, I felt like I had to do it for the healing process. Would I do it again? Yes, I would, because it helped me take another step towards being able to move on. At this point in my life, I am dating again my current girlfriend, and I have been together for a few months. I can't say I have any idea where it is going to go, but I am hopeful that it is going to turn into something long-term. All I know is that I'm going to take it slow. This is also something my girlfriend is fine with. Thankfully, it helps a lot that she supports me in this. My ex-wife and ex-best friend aren't two people I think about anymore. Their lives haven't been easy since they decided to have an affair, but that is what you get. I can safely say that I'm living my best life right now and will continue to do so now that I have those two toxic people out of my life. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.